Tom Collins.
Here.
Craig Palmisano. Richard Patterson.
Here.
John Pitts.
Here.
Dan Adams.
Here.
Margaret Cooper Nolte.
Here.
Stephen Giuseppe.
Here.
Michael Ruffey. Andrew Campbell.
Here.
Rich Tolson.
Here.
Patty Rosenberg. Michael Richmond.
Here. Okay. This meeting is being held in accordance with New Jersey statute requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act Sunshine Law. Notice of this meeting has been advertised in the press and posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building. All applicants are hereby advised that if you receive board approval tonight, you must come forward and sign a form outlining the procedures for obtaining building permits and mercantile licenses. At the conclusion of your case tonight, please approach the board administrator, Palma, to sign the provided information sheet. Okay. And we're going to have the approval of the minutes for the meeting of November 21st, 2024.
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Number 36-2024, Jeffrey and Joe Hampton. Number 37, 2024, Timothy Tizgoskin, LLC. Number 38, 2024, Brittany and Jonathan Santoro.
I'll make that motion. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Our first case is Pamela Feld Randall, 9715 Pacific Avenue, Block 131, Lot 10.02, located in the multifamily zoning district, seeking C variance relief for rear yard setback, side yard setback, and potentially others for a second floor addition. Current on taxes, water, and sewer payments, proof of advertising, and notifications provided. Represented by Brian J. Callahan.
Okay, I'm going to get Mr. McLaren sworn in. Mr. McLaren, please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you'll give throughout the evening will be the truth?
I do.
Thanks.
Good evening, Brian Callahan, law firm Brian Callahan, 101 North Washington Avenue, representing Pam and Harry Randall, 9715 Pacific Avenue. Just for the record, all jurisdictional requirements have been met. Roger, you want me to turn it over to you to go through your report first?
Sure. I'll be brief.
So will I.
That's good after our last meeting we just had. So thank you, board members. The report is based on the application of Pam Feld Randall, 9715 Pacific Avenue, Block 131, Lot 10.02, located in the multifamily zone. Some background is the applicant is seeking relief to construct a dormer on an existing attached single-family structure within a multifamily zone. The fee simple lot has a previously approved 0-foot side yard setback that does not meet the current side yard setback requirements. Just a little bit of background on this application. This is approved as one unit and it was subdivided, hence the lot number 10.02. So by today's standard, because of the subdivision, the side yard setback is now 0, and they're too close with the dormer to the side yard and the rear yard setback. So one could say that the subdivision is causing the variances, or at least one of them. So I'll just go through the variances real quick. Side yard setback to the left, proposed dormer, the required minimum side yard setback is 8 feet. 0 feet exists and 3.2 feet is proposed for the dormer. So that's an expansion of a non-conforming setback. Rear yard setback to the proposed dormer, the required minimum rear yard setback is 20 feet, 16 feet exists, and 16 feet is proposed. Again, a little bit of clarification might be needed on that exact number by the architect. And again, that's an expansion of a non-conforming setback. No waivers have been requested, and I'm not going to go through all my comments, but I did discuss the reasoning why the subdivision is creating this side yard setback variance. And it's where it used to be 2 units on one lot, now it's 1 unit on with a 0-foot setback, so it's an attached single family. FAR, which is an important aspect of this multifamily zone, is far below what is required. So again, I will turn it over to Mr. Callahan.
Just as Roger said, we're seeking side yard setback, rear yard setback, where it was 0, we're bumped out to 3.2. Footprint staying the same, so on the rear, 16 is 16. And really what it is a dormer. On the second floor, you have half of a roof, and then you're stepped down to the 4 feet. Clients wish to raise it up to the 4 feet, add a bedroom and a little study, so in the sense that they have the ability, when they work remotely, that they have someplace to do it other than a kitchen table. They've owned the property for 12 years. Kids grown up, they have kids and grandkids, so the extra bedroom gives them, when it was originally built, it was the developer on one side and his mother on the other side. That's why when you look at the plans, the suite, the master suite is downstairs. It's built for the mother, 2 small bedrooms upstairs. They then subdivided off, sold it off. The Felds bought it in 2011, so they've had it for 12, 13 years. So this just gives them a little wiggle room without, we don't think, creating any negative impact on the neighborhood or on any neighbor, or either neighbor. We've talked to both. They're in good shape. Let me call Mr. Massione. He can walk you through.
Swear me.
Okay, Mr. Mashian, just give us your name and address for the record, please.
Daniel Scott Massione, 1409 New Road, Northfield, New Jersey.
Okay, please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth?
Yes,
You're a licensed architect in
I
New
am.
Jersey. You've been here before several
have.
times, correct? We'll accept your
Yes.
qualifications.
Yes.
Dan, let me get out of the way so you
sure.
can.
No, I'm sorry.
We'll mark this as just Exhibit A1. This is the plan that was turned into you. So, Dan, why don't you walk them through what we want to do with the project?
Sir, A1 shows a couple photos of the existing building and zoning schedule, both the existing and proposed plans. The existing second floor actually has 3 bedrooms. We're reconfiguring the second floor to move 1 bedroom, create some living space. We're adding about 253 square feet, creating a little study area, a little open living space, and adding a bathroom. So it's a very modest addition, and it's in keeping. In the rear of the building, doesn't go beyond the height of the existing building. We're setting it back to the very back wall of the building, which was approved prior, in a prior ordinance, I should say, for structural concerns, to make ease of construction. I think it's more aesthetically pleasing. And that really summarized, it's a really small addition just to modernize this building.
First floor is staying the same.
Yes.
And the side yard upstairs, we bumped it from 0 to 3.2.
There's a lot of benefit to that. It is a 0 lot line configuration, as was explained. This was a unit that was subdivided, subdivision at one point. That, the way we configured it is really a benefit to the drainage and the fire, keeping it separated for fire reasons, and then also providing drainage from the roof, continuous rather than tying into an existing dormer, which exists on the other half of this,
Light,
structure.
air, open space.
Yes. Yeah, I think by placing the addition where we did, we maintain the open space, and actually the configuration of this unit goes towards the ordinance as far as making the most public space, I shouldn't say public, open space around the building available. So, based on the smaller lot size that we have in accordance with the ordinance, this is really, I think, have no negative impact at all.
Roof line, we've maintained.
The height, yes. Yeah, we maintain the height, so the addition occurs completely in the back.
Do you see any negative impact on the neighborhood or the zone, or the character of the neighborhood?
No, I don't. I think, where it's placed is logical, and I think will just enhance this building by a small amount, but provide the living space that will be a benefit and keeps within the densities. We're really not adding, we're adding more living space. We're not adding the bedroom. The bedroom's just being reconfigured, actually being made slightly smaller.
Aesthetically, a little enhancement to the neighborhood also? Property hasn't been really upgraded? in a
Yes,
number of
I
years.
think overall, the updates to the building will keep it maintained and, in current condition.
I don't have any other questions, Mr. Massione. I would open up to the board.
Anybody from the board have anything?
Just one question, were there any comments from the neighbors that were notified?
No,
Versus
we talked to
positive.
neighbors on both sides. They were okay.
Yeah, there should be some benefit to the city in a request for a variance. Can you tell us about a benefit to the city from their variance request?
Well, I believe, did you want to say?
Well, I was going to
anything?
jump in. One of the things I think to the benefit of the city, it keeps a person who bought in the city for the last 13 years in the city. by adding the extra bedroom and the extra things, they don't have to move out of Margate. This is someplace they now have, they're able to stay. It satisfies their needs, even though it's a personal need, helps them raise, keeps their children coming down, their grandchildren coming down, and keeps a family that's been here for 12 years in Margate without causing any negative impact to the surrounding neighborhood or anything else. So we think that is a benefit to the city, where people who made a decision originally to come to Margate, now when you have family that's grown up and you need a little elbow room to work remotely, still have the ability now to stay in Margate.
I could just add, I believe this is a unique configuration with the ordinance can't take every property into consideration, but in keeping with the plan, it has a particularly low floor area ratio for the lot, so I think that's a benefit to the city. I also think with the configuration of the zone, with the dormer on the back providing extra windows, is going to be a good effect of fire safety, because it is difficult to fight a fire when it's a windowless story and there's no way to get in there. It's just a safer building, from that aspect. So they're the two that are, jump out at me. I think this is the proper development for this site.
The landscape coverage for this property is well below the limit. While we're doing all of this reconstruction, is there any consideration to doing anything to give us any more landscape coverage?
That one, I'll let the architect.
Yeah, that's a great question. Since it was, because it was previously developed, we hadn't proposed anything, only because we would be destroying what was there. I could review that and try to perhaps, one of the other things we could do is do some ground planters or something like that, but I haven't looked at that in a way that would be.
There's a lot of concrete, there's a lot of pavers in this
Right.
property, right? There's definitely some opportunity to give us
Some back.
permeable space back.
Mhm. I don't have an exact number that I would be able to, without doing an analysis of that, but I would be, we able to review that if the.
And you make it a condition so that Mr. Massione could work with Mr. McLaren to come up with a landscape plan that adds something back to the property?
Is the homeowner here?
Yes.
Maybe, yeah,
Pam?
Okay.
I don't want to speak for them.
Step up.
Just a quick question before she starts. Roger, it's an existing 91.
There's an expansion in
Doesn't have to do anything.
No, so I mean, we're making it, but it's existing. It's
We'd
already
like to
there.
add some.
It's not, you can't turn it down.
Well,
because it has
I
existing.
could. We do have the entire
Well,
front
well,
yard.
you
I just
have to get sworn in.
Okay,
I just
sorry.
have to, if you're both going to speak, or just one of you, whoever's going to speak, just give us your name and address,
Pamela
please.
Feldrandell, 9715 Pacific Avenue.
Ms. Feldrandell, do you swear affirm the testimony you'll give will be the truth?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
So, I mean, the short answer is I prefer not, because the way the background, if you see the backyard, I don't know what landscape we could put in there that would make sense. It's it's hard to get someone back there even to mow and maintain it. I know it's under the conformity, but I do have a beautiful front grass. We have beautiful beds. I mean, it's not like it's concrete and pavers. It is in the backyard, but the backyard is used basically for putting a table to eat out there, and, it's not, I do understand your concern. It's just a bit limiting with the way that our, backyard is.
I'll just add, based on, her desires too, I think it is a limited backyard and it's used for open space for the house. So we would be limiting that, which might be a negative.
Yeah, I have a question. So with 4 bedrooms, you have to have 2 parking spaces, off-street parking spaces. And you show that on the plan, but however, currently there is an outdoor shower located where the first car going in. You can't get a car in there because of your shower enclosure.
We can.
No,
But I know-
there's
I
two
mean,
clear,
yeah.
but by
I mean,
dimension.
there are
Yes.
I can,
That's
but, excuse me.
Yeah.
I mean, I can actually get 4 in. I know it's not, maybe within the exact, but we
Can you
can.
speak into the
Okay.
microphone,
sorry.
because
Yeah.
it's for the
I mean,
record?
we have fit up to 4 cars in that in that driveway.
Yeah, but that doesn't matter. We're talking about legal spots. So legal spots are 9 by 18. Okay, so.
Right, so we do have two.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I believe we do have the two-dimensional parking spaces indicated. I don't know where the conflict is. I can't identify that.
You're not showing the exterior.
Shower? Is there one that's,
All right, yeah, so, yeah, there's
There's 2 legal spaces.
2 legal spaces. So,
Yeah.
you have enough spaces,
Thank you.
okay? Anybody else? Okay, if nobody else on the board has anything, is there anyone from the public that would like to speak? Public portion's closed. One thing I noticed when I went to look at the property is as far as the rear yard setback goes, I mean, if you look at the house behind it, there's like a park back there. That lot, I don't know why it's so big, but it's like 30 feet. It's huge. So I don't see that being any impact on, the neighbor. The one to the right, their property goes all the way to the, to the back thing. And, you really can't do anything with a 0 setback. It is what it is.
And we bumped it off to 3.2 feet.
Right, which I think is a good thing.
Right.
Yeah, so, that's my comment. All right, all done? You have anything?
We're done.
All right, if there's nothing else, there's 2 C variances. We'll need a motion and a second. They are as follows. There's a side yard setback to the dormer on the left side, 3.2 feet's proposed, 8 feet's the requirement. And the rear yard setback to the dormer, 20 feet's the requirement. And did we get confirmation that is 16 feet that they're proposing? I know is that accurate?
yeah, I believe it.
Okay,
Yeah, I don't know.
because I know Roger's a little bit.
Was there a question upon that?
You had 2 dimensions on there, I just want to make sure.
It is 16. I'm not, the 6 feet?
Yeah,
I'm sorry, it's 16 feet to the dormer.
I took it as
Yeah,
16
yeah,
feet.
it is 16
Okay. So those are the 2 variances, and the conditions will just be the standard ones. Anything in Mr. McLaren's report, unless otherwise addressed, any representations made by the applicant will be followed, and subject to any outside approval, subject to the 50% rule. Just the standard ones, so we'll need a
Right.
motion and a second.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Tom Collins,
You were right, you were short, Brian. Simple case, small addition. I think you tucked it in very well. You're improving the property. I know it's borderline in terms of meeting a C1 with a hardship, but because of the prior owner and the 0 setback line, I think you really do almost meet a C1. As far as the C2 goes, it's a betterment for the neighborhood, it's a betterment for the homeowner, and it's an improvement. Anytime we improve a property in Margate, it's better for Margate. I see no problem with this. I vote in favor.
Richard Patterson,
Yeah, I just reiterate that I do see a benefit to Margate in improving a small house that's still small after this minor addition. I don't see any negative impact, and I approve the application.
Michael Richmond,
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Patterson. It's a small addition. It's going to keep the homeowners here, and, you could probably tear that whole property down if you got together with your neighbor and build a, 4-story, whatever, so I'm going to approve it.
Margaret Gubernalty,
Yeah, I see this as an easy case in terms of it's a existing nonconformity. I think it's a nice expansion in that there's a safety benefit. We're maintaining open space because of the way you're building it in the back. I see no detriment to the neighbors. There's no detriment to the public good or our municipal land use law. I think it's a nice addition, and I vote in favor.
Dan Adams,
To echo everyone else, the comments, I think it's a good addition. I think keeping the height within the same elevation and not increasing it. And Mr. Massione spoke on a fire safety aspect. Anytime we can get more ingress or egress points for access, for firefighting, or access for the people to get out, it's always a good thing. And I believe it's going to be a betterment to the city of Margate, and I vote yes.
Stephen Giesecke.
Yeah, it's a small addition, and I would like to see more pervious, but that being said, I'll approve.
Andrew Campbell.
I agree with the rest of the board members. I approve.
John Pitts.
I approve.
Rich Tolson.
I approve.
Approval is granted with 9 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you very much.
Okay, our next case is Scott Dorfner, 32 North Brunswick Avenue, Block 203, Lot 11, located in the S25 zoning district, seeking C variance relief for overall building coverage, front yard, landscape coverage, and potentially others for the renovation of an existing single-family home. Current on taxes, water and sewer payments, proof of advertising, and notifications provided, represented by Eric Goldstein.
Thank you, board members. The report is based on the application of Scott Dorfner, 32 North Brunswick Avenue, Block 203, Lot 11. Again, as the chairman mentioned, located in the S25 single-family zoning district. Required first floor elevation is 13 feet to the finished floor. C variance relief, planning and zoning report background. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinance of the city of Margate in order to construct a swimming pool, new elevated rear yard deck, and front porch roof. Deemed complete. It's a C2 criteria, substantial benefit variance. The zoning chart is on page 2 of the report, and I guess we need some clarification at some point tonight about the porch setback in the rear. It's 6 foot to the edge of the pool, and it shows 5 feet to the edge of the, I guess, deck. And I think I denied this as a zoning application, and they moved the deck in, so I don't know if you're moving the deck back out, because it's shown both ways in the plans. So we need to clarify that tonight. And continued on page 3 is the zoning chart, plans reviewed, documents reviewed. So I'll go through the variances that I identified and have been requested. Rear yard setback to the deck, whereas a minimum rear yard setback to decks over 18 inches from grade must meet the building setback, which is 12 and a half feet, and about 6 feet is proposed. It might be 5 feet. Again, the plans might be a little inconsistent. Minimum landscape coverage total, whereas the minimum total landscape coverage is 35%, 34.4% exists, and much less than 34.4% is proposed with the pool construction. Again, pool does not count as landscape coverage. Also, exterior steps to the second floor, whereas exterior steps to the second floor are prohibited in single-family residential zones, and one set is proposed. Again, when this came in for zoning, that was to be removed, but it's on the plans again. So I'm not going to go through all my comments. I think the variances alone speak for themselves. And the porch roof in the front is variance-free, so I'm not going to even talk about that. So, Mr. Goldstein, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. McLaurin. Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, Eric Goldstein on behalf of the applicant. With me to my left tonight, John Barnhart. Harry Harper prepared the plans, but John is a licensed professional planner and engineer. He'll be giving testimony tonight. And just by way of background again, this is the house that the property owner is trying to save. This is what kind of we call our classic Margate house. It's a brick house. It's not flood compliant, and we do know that the potential renovations have to meet the 50% rule, which they will. But the property owner wanted to try to make this house more of a house he could use for 12 months out of the year. He's not here all the time, but wants to spend more time at the house and didn't want to tear it down. We've got a set of steps in the back, which, as we've been talking, Mr. Barnhart and I heard the chief at the prior application, presents an extra means of ingress and egress into the house. Mr. McLarnon is correct about the rear with regard to the pool location and to the deck. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Barnhart to talk about the variance that we're looking for. And I think, Roger, we're pretty close on landscaping, but John's going to go through the exact percentage of coverage because we're going to probably remove some additional concrete. So I'll turn the microphone over to Mr. Barnhart and just ask him to get sworn in for Mr. Manos and then have him qualified as an expert.
Okay, Mr. Barnhart, your name and address, please.
John Barnhart, office address 400 North Dover Avenue, Atlantic City.
And please raise your right hand. You swear affirm the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth.
I do.
And you're a professional planner and engineer in
Yes.
New Jersey, been before us numerous times.
Yes.
We'll stipulate to your
Thank you.
credentials.
All right, John, why don't you just walk us through the plan and what you've looked at on Mr. Harper's diagram, as well as the pool, the steps, and the landscape coverage.
Sure. So the plan I have before you is the plan that was submitted with the application prepared by Mr. Harper. As Eric described, there's a couple of different aspects of the project. The first is to create a covered front porch. The porch is there now, but it's to cover the porch. And as Mr. McLaren pointed out, that does not require any variances. With regard to the rear yard, the various elements that are being proposed is a pool that is 14 by 13. That pool will comply with regard to setbacks from the rear and the side, and it also complies with regard to setback from the dwelling, from the structure itself. The second aspect of the development is to utilize a first level area that is currently roof area and create what would be a second level deck, which you would walk out of the second level and onto that deck, which you can see best in this lower elevation here. And the third element is a set of stairs down from that deck into the rear yard. So this application does create 3 variances. One of the variances is with regard to landscape coverage. As the site sits today, it has a landscape coverage of 34.4%, so it is slightly under the requirement of 35%. We've spoken with the client and trying to mitigate that because the client is extremely anxious to have the opportunity to have a pool in his rear yard. What we are proposing from a landscape coverage perspective is to eliminate concrete in the rear yard. There are some HVAC units which have actually already been removed and moved to the roof of the garage, and there's additional concrete along the back property line leading over to the existing shower. The net increase, or I should say the net decrease in landscape coverage would go from 34.4% as it sits today down to 33%. So it's only a 1.4% decrease that we are able to achieve while still allowing us, hopefully, to have the approval for the pool and the stairs that go down into the rear yard. With regard to the stairs, as you know, the stairs are not permitted coming from a second level deck, but I think you have to put those stairs into context because in today's construction, new construction, as we know, if this were a new home, you would have ground floor parking and storage. You would have your first floor that would be basically at the second level, and you typically have stairs both front and rear coming from that level. Maybe it's a rear deck or something like that. But in that building, that's considered a first level still, so stairs are legally allowed to come down into the rear yard from that level. This building, although it's not flood compliant, it's very low lying as compared to the ground. It's only a couple of steps up. So the stairs coming from our second level deck are very consistent with all new construction. So although the stairs are not technically permitted, if we tear the house down, build a new house, put the floor where it's required to be, almost the identical set of steps would then be a permitted structure. So it's just because of the fact that we have a low structure and we have a deck at the second level creates the need for the variance from those stairs. So the variance is technically required because of the way the ordinance is written, but the perception is that they're coming from what would be the required first floor of a building because of how low this building is.
I think the origin of that ordinance is so you don't create an illegal second unit on a second floor.
Understood.
Right.
Which obviously is not an issue here.
Right.
Then the third variance is with regard to the second level deck area. This is probably the better plan to look at. This is the second floor plan. There's a bathroom which then intersects a portion of the roof area, and then the fiberglass deck is kind of like I'll say a Y shape, which covers the existing building. There is no expansion to the footprint of the building. That deck lies within the existing roof area. It's just a space that he would occupy and obviously put railings on. That rear yard setback of the existing structure, which then would become the rear yard setback of the deck, is 4.9 feet as it sits today. So that is the third variance. Excuse me. You know, we look at this application as a balancing type of application, meaning you have a site that we have a client that's trying to achieve some nice outdoor living space, which everybody's very accustomed to in Margate. He would like a modestly sized pool. He would like to have a space in his backyard to be able to sit and enjoy the outside, but recognizes that putting a patio all the way around his pool is unreasonable because the coverage gets too high. So he's proposing what is commonplace now and part of interesting design. He's proposing a pool with a pool coping and then a nice manicured lawn around that pool area.
So just to be clear,
Yep.
no additional impervious coverage around the pool other than the coping?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep. And then the ability to sit on the deck, obviously overlook his pool is the goal here.
How many square feet is the 1% or whatever your difference is?
The one, so it'll be like 37, well, just about 40 square feet. And Mr. Patterson, we did look, if you look at the survey, we looked at trying to balance it. But if you look even go to the front yard even, he's already got wheel strips that go all the way to the driveway. There's really not anything else that we could take away.
So what would the pool, how much smaller would the pool be?
Well, it'd be 40 square feet smaller. So the pool is 14 by 13. So if you wanted to make it, you need to get rid of 40 square feet, you'd have to make it, like 4 feet, 4 feet narrower, something like that. So anyway, we look at this as a balancing scenario. You have an older home, a very, very well kept home, brick home that's been in the community and been very, very well maintained. The front of the property is absolutely manicured with regard to its landscape, and we have a resident that's just trying to improve upon that property in, we believe, a modest fashion. And we think that what he has done is create a scenario that really does not have a negative impact on the neighbors and does not have a negative impact on the zone plan or the zoning ordinance. And Mr. Goldstein mentioned it, and Chief Adams brought it up in the earlier case, so we're gonna ride that. This application does actually provide a second means of egress from the rear of the second floor, which the building doesn't currently have. So we believe that these variances can be granted. I mean, our client is trying to come up with a solution that stays as close to the guidelines of the ordinance as possible, but we do need some minor deviations to make this work.
And the fact that the homeowner is preserving a historic house and not tearing it down to just build something new creates a streetscape that's going to be on Brunswick for years to come without the possibility of them just going in and raising it and starting with something new. There's also a benefit to the public in that regard, correct?
Yeah, preserving this house at its modest size and elevation, and working within the confines of the existing conditions fits better in with the neighborhood than the demolition of this home and construction of the home based on today's standards.
Okay, thank you. John, of course, we have to go through the positive, negative criteria. Do you see any negatives that could be associated with this if the board were to grant the variance?
I don't. Like I said, it's even though we're adding this second floor deck, you have to look at its actual elevation, where it sits in the rear yard. It's essentially the same elevation of every new construction's first floor deck. And with regard to coverage, I think that with our client's understanding of removing some coverage to try to get as close as possible to compliance, or at least no greater decrease, we're almost there. We're 1.4% different.
To the extent someone could possibly conceive this to be a negative, would the positives of what you just described greatly outweigh that negative?
Yeah, I think the benefits do outweigh the detriments in this application.
Okay.
Again, because of the applicant's plan to work as closely as he can to within the ordinance guidelines.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to just rest, reserving the right to call Mr. Barnhart if the board or members of the public have any questions, but I think we've established the positive and negative. John's testimony was fairly clear, so we'll turn it back over to the board.
So, in the rear, what is the setback from the property line to the building? Where that sticks out there?
4.9 feet is the
Okay,
existing
so let's
setback.
just say 5 feet.
Yeah,
And you need, to meet the zoning, you need 12 and a half feet.
correct.
Right. So why, was there, I mean, it's a pretty big deck, you know what I'm saying? And like you say that it's at the elevation of new construction decks, which I get, but it's not at the setback. So
Agreed.
if that was gonna be a new house, so it had to be at 12 and a half feet.
Agreed.
So is there any reason why we just can't take another, 7 feet back on that, that pier there? So
Well, you
at
would
least
just
we
be
get
moving
that
the railing.
conforming, you know what I'm saying? I mean, it's a big deck, even without that.
John, you just have to move the railing back, right?
Right,
Yeah, the
Right.
structure stays there.
yeah.
So the only thing I would say to that, is that if you move it back to 7 feet, that's 9 feet there, so it leaves you 2 feet. So I'm just trying to get an idea, because obviously that's their planned space for being able to have, lounge chairs and such.
That's their what?
I mean, that's where they were planning to be able to have lounge chairs and such, because it is, with the bathroom here, the way it separates that space, that's the biggest floor area, the floor plate of the deck area. So if you come back 7 feet, it puts that's a 9-foot dimension there, so it puts the railing
At
2 feet off of that edge.
Right. Yeah, but then then what do you have from that wall bathroom to the?
Yeah, that's what I was just trying to look at.
Or, to the right, it looks like you have room. I know it's not overlooking the pool, but.
Mr. Chairman, what about if we moved it back to where it was still a variance, but instead of being 5 feet, it was 10 feet back from the property line? That's a significant distance additionally, and there'd still be enough room back there to be close, but they'd be giving up, they put the railing here, as Mr. Collins noted, and there'd be a little bit of room here. On the other side of the rail, there'd be more roof still, but that's kind of close to the setback already, without eliminating.
So you're saying you would bring it back so that the setback in the rear was 10 feet?
Correct.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So it's a 2.5-foot variance.
So 2.5 foot. Okay, if that's what you're proposing, that's what you're proposing.
You're amending it?
Correct, Mr.
Okay.
Collins. So the railing would then, of course, I'm sure Mr. Manos would put in the resolution that as a condition, the railing would have to remain there, which property owner would be okay with.
No, the railing's going to get moved back so that it's to the 10-foot setback.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right, but-
Because it's a fiberglass roof, so it's,
Right.
yeah, okay, right. All right. Anybody else from the board?
Yes,
Did you say that the HVAC units are going to be moved to the top of the garage?
they've already been moved.
So why don't you put the stairway on the other side of that? On the garage side, and then they'll have a lot more room around the pool.
When-
If the stairway gets approved, why doesn't it move over to the other side of that bump out on the back of the house?
You mean over here?
Yeah.
So you have to look at the ground level plan to understand that there's a door there and a stair that comes out to the ground level and a shower there. You wouldn't be able to, the stairs wouldn't work in that location. If you look at it here, it looks like it would work just fine, right? But if you look at it on this elevation, you wouldn't be able to get the stairs to work there.
Is that supposed to be the main access for the pool? I mean, if you're in the house and you got a kid drowning in the pool, you got a long way to get out there.
Well, the design really doesn't have anything to do with the variance. So you put the stairs on the left or you put the stairs on the right, it's going to be a variance, so.
Well, you probably want closer access to the pool from the deck.
Right. Right. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. We're going to open up to the public. Anyone from the public like to speak? Public portion is closed. Anybody, any other comments from the board? All right.
Well, I do have one more question about the stairway. On the front of these plans that was given to us, and it's the, I guess, the survey plan, it shows the stairs coming down straight, and then it shows like 3 or 4 steps coming up towards the pool. And when I was at the property, you know, and looking at the elevation, I'm wondering how high each riser is, because it looked really like there wasn't enough space to get the number of stairs you need.
So again, that's a building, that's a building department.
Not my job?
Yeah, no.
No, it's fine. It's good to talk about.
It's building department.
Okay.
So, Mr. Chairman, what we would propose, as amended, as referenced by Mr. Collins and by yourself, Mr. Chairman, is that the rear setback would be 10, the pool would remain. Mr. Barnhart would confirm with Mr. McLarnon on the landscape to make sure the coverage came down to whatever number John can get it to.
So that's a pretty accurate assessment, John, right? That it's going to be about 40,
33% is where we would be able to get it to.
okay, which is about 40 square feet, is that what you're saying?
Well, it's
Right around there.
Yeah, the question was how much would that take away from the pool?
Right.
So 2% of, it's already under, it's at 34.4
Right.
now. So 2% of this lot area would be actually 37 and a half times 2. So it would be like 75 square feet is the difference between the conforming and the proposed.
Okay, okay.
With that, we would rest.
All right. There's no further questions. It's another C variance application. There's 3 variances. I'll summarize them, then we'll need a motion in a second. The rear yard setback to the deck is going to be amended. It's a 10-foot setback where, yeah, we opened to the public, where 12 and a half feet is required. The total landscape coverage, 35% is the requirement. They're at 34.4%, and that's going to be reduced to 33%. And then the exterior steps to the second floor are not permitted, and they are proposing a set. In terms of conditions, I believe it's just the standard conditions, anything in Mr. McLaren's report, subject to any outside approval, subject to the 50% rule, any representations made during the course of the hearing.
I'll make that motion.
Any seconds?
I'll second.
Tom Collins?
At the beginning of this case, it really looked like this was going to be a tough hurdle. I think what Eric and John did here was pretty good. The outside stair, I really don't like them too much, but at the same time, it does provide egress and safety, and it's an improvement to what's going on. And the stairs were there originally, which I know because I only did it, was because it was to keep renters, you know, from renting units or subdividing. I think it really is a benefit to the city of Margate and to the community to maintain this house. It's a beautiful brick house. There's a lot of commotion going on lately about beautiful brick houses being torn down. This is something where I think you've met and gone overboard. The landscaping is very de minimis. You're pretty close, and a lot better than what you were going to be. So I think this is a good project, and I vote in favor.
Thank you.
Richard Patterson?
Well, just as Tom said, I had very strong misgivings against losing any landscaping until I heard the effort they went through. I was looking at it coming down to like 20 or 25, and to just lose a little over 1%, I think you did it as best as you could, and I don't think that 30 feet or 35 feet or whatever makes a difference. Well, it does make a difference, but I think it's de minimis at this point. I see the benefit of here improving a house, which adds a lot of life to that house as it is for the people that would stay there with these improvements. So I approve the application.
Thanks, Rich.
Michael Richmond?
Yeah, I agree. I thought this was going to be a tough road to hoe with this case too, but I think eliminating a lot of that concrete really helped a lot, and also reducing the rear setback variance, which I think would have been maybe the only negative that I would have seen to the neighborhood. As far as the outside stair goes, I have no problem with that, so I'm going to approve it.
Margaret Gubernalty?
Yes, I see this as a case of give and take. I thank you for your concessions. The applicant, they want a deck and a pool for their family. I think the landscaping coverage is de minimis. The pool is not oversized, and I think we're maintaining an older home that's charming and fits better in the neighborhood than, say, a new construction had there been one built. It's a modest-sized home. I don't see any negative impacts to the neighborhood, and I approve the application.
Thank you.
Dan Adams?
Thank you. I have to agree in a lot of aspects. One, the historical value and the beauty of this home, to keep that in Margate, to me, is one of the main reasons why, I kind of support this. To talk about some of the other aspects of the stairwell, if you were building a new house, you would have the same stairwell. And to use your own comments that I used earlier against me, I have to agree. And anytime we can add value as far as safety for the residents or occupants, I believe in my aspect, in my career, in my passion, it's a good thing. And it not only gives the people a chance to get out, but it also gives us a chance to get in the event that something was wrong. The landscape aspect of it, again, the pool is not something that's oversized and taking the entire area. The fact that you're conceding and taking the concrete out of that area in the back and willing to put landscape in there, I think it's minimal in the overall view. And just to keep that value of the home and that look, and I love the idea of adding the permanent porch on the front, because I think it's just going to give you the house a little more character and view. I vote yes.
Stephen Giesecke?
I'm not totally convinced about this being receiving the C variance. I think even though the land coverage is small, it's important. It's very important, and we're not just losing the cubic feet of the pool, but the square feet, but we'd be losing cubic feet. And with the flooding that's happening, I think that's this is pretty significant. So I'm not going to approve.
Andrew Campbell?
When I first looked at the house, I got to admit I was a little skeptical about some of the things here. But I do appreciate your flexibility in trying to bring it up to a standard that we all could work with. The pool, being a 14 by 13 foot pool is a small pool. And I think that's going to make a difference with the landscaping or anything like that. And to echo Mr. Adams' comments about safety, that's a big deal to me as well. So I do approve.
John Pitts?
Yeah, so I think granting the variance would benefit only the property owner. I vote no.
Rich Tolson?
I believe the applicant's cooperation on concessions to get as close as possible to the requirements is admirable. I think the preservation of an existing home in the city compared to the demolition and construction of what we're seeing going up over the last 5 years or so a benefit to the city. Anybody who knows my background, the preservation of a brick home is even more important. So I'll vote in favor of this.
Approval is granted, 7 in favor and 2 opposed.
Thank you all.
All right, our next case is FimSim Capital GP LLC, 110 South Andover Avenue, Block 1.02, Lot 12, located in the S30 zoning district, seeking C variance relief for curb cut width and potentially others for a new single-family home. Current on taxes, water, and sewer payments, proof of advertising, and notifications provided, represented by Eric Goldstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the board will remember this is the continuation of the case we had back here in October. At the time, I was with Jerry Blackman, the architect from OSK Design. I'm going to rely on his testimony, but there was some confusion as to the curb cut width, that Roger had a distance on the plan and the architect had a different distance. Roger was correct that the curb cut width shown on the original plan that passed through zoning was 18 feet. The curb cut that had existed was actually 27 and a half feet, and it went over the property line. And the board wanted to know how that happened. Still don't know, other than I've been going back and forth a little bit with Roger and with the architect, and this concept of the 27-foot wide curb cut, the board made it pretty clear that that was just too much. Even though this is a true double lot and could be subdivided, we went back and I think Roger had asked for a distance of curb cut width that we'd be asking for this reason. And the amended application is for 22 feet, not for 27. So originally put in for 27, there was a 27 that was there over the line. And Roger and I talked about this concept of flaring out. The house itself is 100% compliant, correct, Roger?
Mhm.
So the house needs no variances. The only thing now, based on Mr. Blackman's testimony, we're seeking is the curb cut to be narrower than the driveway. And it's unfortunate, because I think 27 would have been a nice width, but we know it's too much, that the property owners are going to have to pull in and pull a little bit to the right on the right side, a little bit to the left on the left side, but it will eliminate the need to realign with the neighbor's property next door, because it'll be shortened up greatly. And the builder, Mr. Poley, who's pretty much done with most of the house, just has to now relay the curb cut to be 22 feet wide if the board approves, as opposed to the 27 that they were going to put it in at. And with the rest of everything else we've been doing, we're going to rely on Mr. Blackman's testimony. I'm certainly able to answer questions, but that's it. We're just talking about clarification of the width we were seeking.
Eric, was that last month?
It was October.
October. Should we, if you're going to rely on who was here in October? Who was not here in October? Let's put it that way. I don't think Dan was. I don't think.
Right.
Is it just the three? Was everyone else here in October? All right. I'm going to ask, since we're relying on the past testimony.
Sure.
I'll ask those three board members just to. You don't have to go sit in the crowd or anything like that. Just you can't participate in this application because it's really a continuation and relying on past testimony.
Okay.
So as I understand it, it's a 22-foot wide curb cut now, correct?
No, well, no. The application's for 22.
For 22.
Right. There's an existing wider curb cut there, which will get redone. And just by way of background, how this happened was miscommunication with the architect and the builder. There was, as I said before, the 27-foot wide cut that extended past. And the architect thought that if he kept it at the same width, all they would have to do is shift it over a little bit and it would be fine. But the plans that were submitted showed 18 feet. Roger was right that that was the submission. That's why they got the permit. Had they been submitted with 27 feet, I suspect that wouldn't have gone through. So that's how we got here.
Eric, here it shows two driveways.
Correct.
What's this over here that you need a driveway for?
It's not, that's not, it's just extra concrete for, they might have a golf cart or they have like an electric e-bikes and stuff. The curb cut's gonna line up in front of the driveway.
Well, it shows it going all the way over to this, almost
Is
to
that
the
the
property.
plan for 27 feet?
It says existing 27, realign 21. and it shows the 21.
Well, that was a mistake by the
No,
owner.
that's 27.
It's
Realigned.
27. It's not 20, it's 27.
Reducing it.
It looks like a
realigned.
1, but it's a 7.
Oh, okay. It's old eyes.
But they're making it.
The beard got in my way.
So, on the right-hand side, where it says garage there, that's grass, right? That's not concrete.
Correct. I think it might be concrete up until the edge of the house, and then on the right side is,
It's grass.
yeah.
All right. So why are you requesting a 22-foot curb cut? Instead of why wouldn't an 18-feet curb cut work there?
I think, Mr. Richmond, just from the architect told me, because they're gonna be pulling in from one side of the street only.
Right.
They're not gonna go to the end and come back, that it just made it a little bit easier to get in and out of the parking for both garage spaces. Because in most homes, you're gonna come in potentially from both sides. Here, it's probably never going to happen where you're gonna enter from the boardwalk side of,
Right. Well, there's no boardwalk there, but.
I'm sorry, the beach side. Yeah, you definitely can. So there's really no good reason for that, other than it's easier to come in from Andover and make a right than make a left.
But we gotta find out, is it being moved this way or both ways?
So the plan I'm looking at, it's still, I mean, it says realign 27-foot curb cut. Is there something that shows 22?
That's scale there.
Right.
They might be moving it over a little bit.
Right.
Yeah, they're taking, what you're saying, they're taking 5 foot, so it should be on this side.
So what your justification is that it's gonna, since most curb cuts you can come in, well, not necessarily, well, I guess you could. Even though it's a one-way street, I guess you could do it. Your justification is because it's so close to the beach,
Correct, and Mr. Blackman testified for the last time, I'm sure maybe the board members remember, don't, I know you're busy, that you're not losing a spot on the street because there's no parking on that street. Across the street is they're 2 homes, but it's a wider curb cut for both because they're side by side. So you're gonna have less of a curb cut there on this side of Andover as you do on the Ventnor side. So it really just makes it easier to get in and out of the property.
why can't you just make it a 20-foot curb cut?
Well, why not make it 18-foot? You can't get into an 18-footer, you shouldn't be driving.
I think Mr. Patter, I mean, we could do that, Mr. Richmond. I think the reason it's not 18 is it's just easier once you're coming in to access, because the flare of the curb cut, it's just ease of use for the owner.
Eric, you say you're too close to the beach. Isn't the driveway on the opposite side of the house from the beach?
It is.
So they have plenty of room to back out or whatever to get in that driveway from.
Right, but they're not going to be coming in head first from the beach side. They'll be coming in head first from the Andover.
Oh, I understand that, but as far as getting out, there's no problem. It's not like it's too close to the.
No, your turning radius won't be affected.
No.
That's correct. Well, we could do 20. If that's,
Well, that's my suggestion, that's
Okay.
not the board.
well, you're the chairman of the board, so I would say that
Right.
if 20 is the suggestion, I'd be able to get that through the property owner.
Roger, question for you. My vision, it's not what it used to be, but that street looks like it's a little narrower than the normal street.
It's a 50-foot right-of-way, so that usually means a 30-foot cartway, 10-foot right-of-way on each side, so 30 feet's pretty narrow.
It is. I mean,
Yeah.
Is that unusual for Margate, a 50-foot right away?
No, it's not.
It's not. It's a Margate street.
but some of them are larger.
But they're usually one-way streets. This is two-way.
How many parking spots are required?
For the house,
Yes.
I think 4. Now, my eyes are bad here. I think we meet or exceed parking.
How many, so we have, we meet or exceed for the
Yes.
beggar?
Yeah, we're not looking for any parking variance.
Right.
And the house itself meets all coverage.
And it is a true double lot, so it's 100 feet?
It's more than
Yeah.
that.
It says
Yeah.
100 feet.
Yeah, 100 by,
It's not your normal
61.
lot, it's larger than most.
So, Rich, are you okay if you amend it to 20 feet?
property owner said 20 is okay.
Like I said, 18 feet's plenty. You can get in and out. I don't see any reason why they need the extra. Hopefully someday we'll allow parking on these streets on one side or the other.
So they don't park on Atlantic Avenue in the summer. So they can park at their own property. I don't know. I think it's a special property, and I think it's what they come here for.
So we would amend it to,
Here for a variance, and because it's a special property, and because it is different than most, we have to look at each case as an individual case, and I think that's what we're doing here. It's a beachfront property, there's no parking on the street, it's a double lot, and I think that's why the applicants come to us, so we can look at each case and approve or not. Just my take.
I agree with you, Pinky. Really do. And I think it's very de minimis. I mean, you're not, it's a beach block home. You want to make sure that you're getting great rateable and it's not going to interfere with anything in the neighborhood. There's no detriment to the neighborhood by having a 2-foot wider driveway.
There's no benefit either.
Maybe there is.
Eric? Yeah, I gotta say, I get with these beach blocks, and I mean, you can say, hopefully in the future we'll have beach block parking, which I would like to see, but in the meantime, I don't know that, we've been talking about this forever, since when I got on the board, and that's been like 16 years ago. So, in the meantime, like Tom said, I don't think that I don't think a 20-foot curb cut is really detrimental. That's just my opinion.
And that's what it used to be,
And that's what, it was bigger than that, was it?
20 foot.
Oh, it was 20 foot, so, yeah, okay. Right.
No, I mean, we used to approve 20 foot.
But existing, well, it doesn't matter, but existing was 27, right? Yeah.
Eric, we're looking at the realigned curb cut, correct?
correct.
Okay. So the realigned curb cut, where it ends, okay, closer to the Atlantic Avenue side, right?
Okay.
You're saying that would be, instead of, it says 27 feet on the plan right here, it would be cut down to 20 feet?
Correct.
Okay. So that 20 feet is not going to, at what point does that, where is that 20-foot in reference to that extra space on the side of the house right now, which is grass, the gas meter, and the,
It looks like it's about 7 feet in. Well, it is 7 feet in, because right now it's 27 feet and you're reducing it by 7.
okay,
Which side is it coming off of?
It's coming, I'm sorry, it's coming off of the house directly to the right of the house, if you're looking at it, which would be the second one.
Atlantic Avenue.
Atlantic Avenue
Yeah,
side.
Atlantic Avenue side.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
so the, okay. Because now, as we go there right now, you can pull right into that spot. That could be an extra spot today, right this second, when you look at the house.
Right, because you've got it
But
curved.
that will be gone.
Correct. It'll be
Okay.
7 feet less than it is now.
Okay. And you're saying that it would be enough space for a golf cart or something like that? But
Whatever.
they would have to pull into the driveway
Right, you'd have to pull in,
portion.
Mr. Campbell, and you'd have to make a right and kind of work around.
Yes.
Well, you're not gonna pull a golf cart onto, to the grass.
You might, I don't know, people are parking cars on grass.
Well,
on
I think
Amherst.
there's a law.
We're not supposed to.
I
You're not
know, but-
supposed to.
In the summer, there's cars in the yard.
Just take back the.
Right, but I mean, I'm just saying, you're in Margate.
Right, I know, we're not,
Yeah,
I know, it's
you know
not
what I'm saying.
a permitted use, but practically
Right.
speaking, you're gonna see that.
Right.
You know, the sad part is, you know,
landscaping at all?
beachfront house, you have all these cars, they come up, they park in front, they empty everything out, then they're backing around and doing a three-point turn to come back. You know they sit there in the beachfront to unload all their stuff.
Right.
I mean, I don't see it.
The horrors
This
of
is a
living
bad
on the
thing.
beach.
I mean, you know what happens at the beachfront? You got Leo's Yum Yum truck, and then you got 4 other people backed up in order to empty their chairs. It's a beachfront house, they want their parking. I don't know. It's my 3 cents.
And I appreciate that. It's not even so much for,
It's a different property. I mean,
it's a very large house, it's a double lot, and, you know, as Mr. Patterson said, these are first world problems, but every case we have is a first world problem for the most part. You know, we're not helping someone to bring their, you know, indigent family to live next door. All the homes in town have very nice, you know, facades, and new homes are built well because the people want to live here, so that's a good thing.
Anybody else from the board? Okay, we're going to open it up to the public.
Steve Baglito, 9600 Lank Avenue, Margate, New Jersey.
Mr. Baglito, swear to tell the truth?
Most of the time. Yes.
All right, go ahead.
So if the curb cut exists at 27 feet, wouldn't that be grandfathered in if they don't touch the sidewalks and the curb? Explain, please.
No.
No.
Why?
It's redevelopment of the property. That
Redevelopment. Thank you.
Yeah, kind of example I think of that is like the gas stations. Someone knocks down the gas station where there's all that depressed curb, but you don't get to keep that. And that's the easy example.
It's easier to pull in.
Yeah. It is, but
Anybody else from the public? Okay, public portion is closed. Anybody else from the board?
I don't know. I'm gonna ask that.
Leo?
Yeah. Well, so we doing 20 or 22 or
20.
20?
20.
Okay, so it's the one variance. 18 is permitted. There's 27 there, and they're proposing 20 feet. And I would just say, in making your decision, in my opinion, it shouldn't be based on something you're hoping to happen in the future that's may or may not ever happen, you know, in terms of beach block parking. But with that said, the conditions will just be all the standard ones we put in every resolution. And we'll need a motion, a second, and a roll call vote.
I make that motion.
I'll second.
Tom Collins.
A lot of time spent on 2 feet of a driveway. We're talking about a beach block street. We're talking about no parking on the street. We're talking about what could be, but that's not what we're here tonight for. We have to vote really on what exists today, not what we think is going to happen in 10 years. You got a $5 or $6 million home, and we want to punish them or keep their. Yeah, well, you're trying to keep their parking, so it's harder to park, and then they'll just use street parking. It's so much easier to have a beach block home, put all their parking on the property, because they can do that, and leave the street parking on Atlantic Avenue for everyone else. This is a simple, I think it's a great benefit. We always give extra allowances. I've been on this board over 23, 24 years. The bay and the beach is always, that's what Margate is. That's what our core is, and I think we need to stick with that, and I vote in favor of it.
Thank you.
Richard Patterson.
Well, I've recently learned a lesson. I have to clarify when I say things. My opinion has nothing to do with possible future parking. I apologize for making that comment. My objection is this is one of the most ridiculous applications I've seen for it. An 18-foot park is easy to get in and easy to get out of. It doesn't benefit anybody. Again, it's not because there may be parking in the future. That has nothing to do with my opinion. My opinion is this, it just isn't necessary, and why we do a favor for someone on the beach makes no sense. I vote no.
Michael Richmond.
I don't think that 2 feet on a 100-foot lot is a big deal. It could be subdivided, and if it was subdivided, you'd probably have two 18-foot curb cuts, which really doesn't make any difference anyway, because there's no parking on the beach block, on that beach block anyway. So, I don't have a problem with it. I'm going to vote yes.
Margaret Gubernalty.
Yes, I agree with Tom Collins and our chairman. 2 feet on a 100-foot lot is de minimis. I was okay with 22. It's a double lot, it's beachfront, it's a beautiful improvement to our city and to the street, and I vote in favor.
Thank you.
Stephen Giesecke.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a benefit for the people for ease of egress and getting in and out of the driveway, and makes things smoother. So I approve. I do want to make a comment that when we talk about beach parking, we do have beach parking. It's just on a certain hours that we don't have beach parking. And I think we have to keep that in mind. But anyway, I approve.
Thank you.
Andrew Campbell.
To piggyback on Stephen's comment, bringing that down from 27 feet to 20, we gain an extra 7 feet for possibly a small car to park there during those hours of parking. I approve.
John Pitts.
I approve.
Approval is granted with 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
All right. Thank you all. Have a good night. Next application.
So, you want to talk about the board members of the variance?
Yeah, for the last application, MRD Margate, 9211 Monmouth Avenue, there's a D variance involved, so that disqualifies by law 2 of our members, the mayor's designee and our city official. Sure. Any else?
Hey, John. John, Merry Christmas. Okay. Huh? Yeah, okay, we're going to take like a 3-minute break.
We gave you 3, Tom.
This is our last case. MRD Margate LLC, 9211 Monmouth Avenue, Block 426, Lot 21. Okay? Everybody on? Located in the WSD zoning district, which is the Waterfront Special District, seeking major site plan approval, D variance relief for a residential structure, C variance relief for landscaping, front yard setbacks, and potentially others in order to construct a 6-townhome development. Current on taxes, water and sewer payments, proof of advertising, and notifications provided. Represented by Christopher Balanson.
So I'll lead off real quick. The report is based on the application at MRD Margate LLC, 9211 Monmouth Avenue, Block 426, Lot 21, located in the WSD or Waterfront Special District in the city of Margate, seeking C variance and D variance relief for major preliminary and final site plan approval. Planning and engineering report. Background is as follows. The applicant is seeking relief from the ordinances of the city of Margate to replace an existing multi-unit residential structure with 6 attached townhome-style residential units in a zone that permits residential provided it is above commercial. Several variances are required, which would be for conditional use, meaning no commercial element, of residential dwelling units as per multifamily zoning standards. A fuel bulk requirements are not being met, and again, the testimony will be provided. So a little background on the zoning of this. As you can see on page 1 of the site plan plans, this lot and the neighboring lot are carved out and included in the WSD zoning district. When we discussed the master plan 10 years ago, or 9 years ago, we kind of left it alone so we wouldn't outzone what was there and not knowing that something was going to go there. And we created the WAPC zoning district, which is Washington Avenue Pedestrian Corridor, which in my opinion, this lot is better suited for the Washington Avenue pedestrian corridor zoning requirements than a WSD. And again, commercial parking lots and stuff like that are still permitted in either zone. But with the Washington Avenue pedestrian corridor and the grant we have, this is more suited to follow those zoning standards versus the waterfront special district, this is not even on Amherst Avenue or close to that waterfront area. Close enough. So a little background on that. So this is deemed complete. The zoning chart is on page 2, highlighted in yellow or gray, depends on how you made your copy, are the variances required. Documents reviewed on section 2, page 3. Plans received and reviewed on page 4. And section 3 identifies the variances needed. First one is the use variance D3, conditional use, whereas in the WSD zoning district, use is not permitted on the ground floor as a condition of mixed use, and residential use is being proposed on the ground floor, meaning parking, storage, and entryway, and no commercial. Front yard setback to the building along Washington Avenue, whereas the minimum front yard setback based on average within 200 feet is greater than 15 feet, and 15 feet is proposed. Front yard setback for the building on Monmouth Avenue, whereas the minimum front yard setback based on average within 200 feet is greater than 9 feet, and 9 feet is proposed. Minimum landscape coverage total, whereas the minimum landscape total coverage required is 35%, 62.3% exists, and 26.5% is proposed. And again, that variance is dedicated or a result of the additional parking being provided on the site. And again, the testimony provided by Mr. Balanson and his team will discuss that further. Again, some of my comments, I'm not going to go through every single one, because I think you ought to hear the testimony prior to all my comments. Going back to the Washington Avenue pedestrian corridor project, we just got an extension from DOT because there's federal money involved. I think we need to work with the contractor, if they get approval tonight or whenever, that we will work with them in order to satisfy what the city wants to do on the pedestrian corridor, and maybe, so we don't want to do things twice. We don't want to have them put the sidewalks in, the trees, lighting, and all that corner, if we're just going to go in there 6 months later and rip it out.
Right.
But they have to make the site safe, no matter what. So if they have to put a temporary sidewalk in for a duration, so be it. And maybe not even include the street trees on this project on that corridor, so we all have the same size trees from the city project down the whole way. That's my suggestion. If you're fine with that, we can make that a condition of approval. Site lighting is presumed to be all building mounted, and the lighting plan is required. Again, that can be satisfied by the application. Again, since this is a major preliminary and final site plan, they have to follow all the site plan requirements, including the landscaping. And again, a lot of this will be waivable items, fences and walls, and also an engineer's estimate has to be provided, as well as a performance bond and escrow. You're agreeable to that?
Of course.
Okay. And again, I write my recommendations for what needs to be approved for the use variance. And again, it's a conditional use, not a standard use, so that the requirements are a little bit less. So, Chris, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you.
Chris, just real quick, you
Yeah.
said of course, are you saying all the conditions he said with the future and the sidewalks and all that?
No, what I was referring to was the bonding and the engineer's cost estimate. There are some site plan requirements there that relate to standard commercial site plans with buffers and things like that we would waive, and I can work with Leo on that, or with Roger on that. But if there's anything, Tom, that you think should be incorporated, just let us know. Thank you, board members. I'm Chris Balanson. I represent MRD Margate LLC with respect to this application for 9211 Monmouth Avenue. It's the site that is currently approved with a 10-unit, it's a former motel, 10-unit apartment building, 5 at grade and 5 above that. We are hopeful that that building will be replaced with what we propose, and MRD proposes. Mitchell Davis from MRD is here. He's the principal. Say hello. What we propose to develop with a 6-unit townhouse-style development with units facing Washington Avenue and parking coming in off of Monmouth Avenue. The property that we're here to deal with is Lot 21 and Block 426. As Roger said, it's in the Waterfront Special District, although, for those of you who may remember, and why Roger, I believe, said it's more appropriate in the corridor district without commercial at grade, because like 20 years ago, there was a long-term planning committee, which some of us were members of, and the proposal at the time was to hopefully generate a commercial corridor going to the bay.
From the ocean.
That's right. And in the 10 or 15 years that elapsed since then, the only thing that came about was Wawa. And that's it. Ocean City Home Bank, which is now closed. Not one other new commercial development was developed in that corridor, and that's why, as Roger said, it should have been carved out and placed with the new corridor concept as opposed to stayed in WSD. And the distinction being, if it wasn't clear, the distinction being, the corridor zoning doesn't require the commercial at grade. However, for tonight's purposes, it's in that zone, and we have to ask for variance for it not to be included. So typically, what you would have to develop here would be commercial at grade if you want to do residential above. We are requesting not to do the commercial at grade for a variety of reasons. I will touch upon one. Number one, the entirety of Washington Avenue until you get to the bay is multifamily. And this is more consistent with that. Number two, to put 6 units, which you could do, above a couple thousand square feet of commercial with parking would cause as much of a parking problem, circulation problem, traffic problem, as we might have forthcoming on Adams Avenue soon. In order to not compound the traffic problems and concerns we have already in that area, we think instilling commercial there would just compound that. We don't think it's a good use at that intersection. John can touch on that a little bit more specifically. As has been pointed out, we are requesting front yard setback variances based upon the average on the street. If you're familiar with the area, Monmouth Avenue, we're stuck with measuring one other property next door. We have no variation. We're stuck with their setback, which was 15. We're asking that it be 9. And we think that's appropriate because in that location, you also have some right-of-way up in the lawn area, meaning it appears larger than the 9 feet, more like 11 or 12 feet of a setback. And the same thing on Washington Avenue. It appears further back than the 15 feet we're proposing because you have some lawn area that's up on the site, but it's right away. You can't tell the difference. It just looks like the front yard setback is bigger and the building is further back. So we're asking for 9 on Monmouth, 15 on Washington, which you'll hear we believe is appropriate. It also allows us to provide additional, substantially more front yard landscaping. We're up in the 80 percentile on both frontages, where only 60% is required. Like 85% and 83% of landscaping in the front yards on both of the primary frontages. We're asking for a variance to eliminate some in the rear where the parking is. Roger suggested some permeable pavers, whatever works. However, I will tell you this, if we eliminate some of the extra parking, we can meet landscaping. You guys can discuss that. I think we'd rather have the parking back there. With that, I think it's a good application. It's been a long time coming for that site. A lot of people have looked at it. Everybody wanted to max it out. What you'll hear tonight is that site could be developed with density we're allowed to have with 7 units, 7.5 units. We are doing 6. And we are providing about 10 extra parking spaces. With that having been said, please swear in Mr. Barnhart and Mr. Fenwick, and we can work with those guys.
All right, Mr. Fenwick, Mr. Barnhart, just your name and addresses for the record, please.
Use the microphone, please. Thank you. Thanks, Rich.
Steve Fenwick, licensed architect and planner, state of New Jersey, offices in Linwood, New Jersey.
Okay. Mr. Barnhart?
John Barnhart, New Jersey licensed professional engineer, licensed professional planner, certified municipal engineer in the state of New Jersey, office address 400 North Dover Avenue, Atlantic City.
And if you can each please raise your right hand, each swear or affirm the testimony you'll give this evening will be the truth.
I do.
I do.
And Mr. Barnhart, you were here earlier tonight. We accepted you as an expert. And Mr. Fenwick, you've been here several times, correct?
Yes.
He's a licensed architect and a planner, correct?
Yes, yes, for
We'll accept
years,
Mr.
yes.
Fenwick as an expert?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
My intention is to have Mr. Fenwick testify first. He designed the building. He'll go through the building for us, so if you have questions about the architecture, the building layout, design, bedrooms, anything like that, that's for Steve. He's going to testify now. Steve, if you would, without me asking you 100 questions, take the board through the building and what you've designed.
Thanks, Chris. So I guess we'll start out with this 3D perspective drawing that was handed out. This is,
That can be applicant one.
Okay.
this is the view.
Rendering,
I'm going to block people.
3D rendering.
This is the view for Monmouth and Washington. There are other, I think there's 4 units, townhouse units, just next door that our firm actually designed, I don't know, like 16 years ago, I don't remember, a while back. And these kind of align with that, supporting this pedestrian corridor that Roger was alluding to some extent. Yeah, so the buildings are basically 2.5 stories over parking storage. And so this is the parking storage area. The garage is at the back. I'll show you in a minute. You have bedrooms, living, dining, kitchen, and master suites. There are 4 bedrooms in each unit. Not sure what you folks have in front of you, but this drawing shows the plans. So John will take you through the parking access and how the site's like so vastly improved with curb cuts and parking. But we arrive at the back of the unit, this being Washington, and there are 2 spaces for each unit, one inside and one just outside the garage.
Steve, that access is off of Monmouth Avenue.
Yes, John will show you, there's a parking lot.
I just want the board to be oriented while you talk, that's all.
Yes, you come in off of Monmouth and you pull into your own building, and there's open parking across. So I think there's 26 parking spaces for 6 units, one of which is a barrier-free unit, which is important to have like an extra unit, in my opinion. It's not really codified properly anywhere, except for commercial uses. So anyway, so you come in, you have a front door off of Washington, and you have a back door off of the parking area. You have an outdoor space, you have a space in the garage, and then there's an extra 8x8 space in the back of the garage, and then you have another storage room in the front. There's stairs and an elevator. The next floor has 3 bedrooms. And the floor above is the living, dining, kitchen, great room with a nice deck. There are views to the bay. We've tried to take advantage of that. And you go up one other level, you have a half floor per the ordinance that provides space for the master suite, which also has a deck. Yeah, these sections basically show a cut through parallel to Washington. You can see there's basically 6 units. The top floor is a half story. The lower floor is parking and storage.
The parking at grade, Steve, there's one space that's under the building, the garage, and one that's underneath.
Yeah, one space is in a garage, behind a garage door, and then actually in front of your car, you have another 8x8 space, and then you have a storage room. I have to put my glasses on for that.
There's really not room for much else other than the storage area and the parking, inside, downstairs.
No, there isn't. It's just an entry foyer, elevator, and a staircase. And the storage room is nice. It's like 18 by 8.
How do you get to the storage room? You have to go through the garage?
You can go through the foyer. There's
Oh,
a door from the foyer, and there's a door from the garage, both ways. Yeah.
I didn't see it. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's nice, you put all your junk in there. Yeah, so it's nice in that respect. So this drawing is the orthogonal elevations. This is Washington Street. This is from the parking area. This is,
Monmouth Avenue.
this one is Monmouth Avenue, and this is, the faces the townhomes closer to the bay. Our
Steve,
client asked us to,
Your height complies overall? In fact, you have staggered?
yes,
height of building?
yes, the height complies overall. We tried to take advantage of the opportunities for view wherever we could, and, our client wanted an up-to-date, sharp-looking building.
When you first met, you realized that you could do actually, with the density, 7.5 units on this 16,000 square foot lot, but the client, Mitchell, wanted to keep it conservative and went with 6 units, six nice units.
We did a whole feasibility study, actually, and I don't remember all the potential yields, but this was not the most dense yield that we could have come up with. So we thought this was a practical yield and an aesthetically pleasing yield, and it provides good space and facility for parking and access to the building, and a really nice view along Washington Street. You have some nice single-family homes across the street. You have the nice townhomes going. We did a duplex over on the other corner. Is that Amherst that runs parallel to the water? I don't know, 3 years ago. That turned out well.
Steve, real quick,
Yeah.
over here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, hey, Roger.
You mentioned the height complies. On the plan you submitted, you said you need a variance. The site plan says you comply.
Oh, you're right. No, it doesn't comply. It doesn't comply, but it's less than 10%.
Right, so it's a C variance for the height.
C variance,
You're
yeah.
seeking 2 feet 11 inches over, where 3 feet would be
Yes,
a D variance, so
yes.
Just that one section, obviously the higher section.
just the peak.
Sorry about that.
That's all right.
You can see it here on this section here, 4C. You can see it here.
Now, that enables you to keep the pitch at 512?
That's a technical question, Chris. I don't know if
I'll deal with that one next.
if I'm able to answer it.
Sorry.
It's
Steve,
well, so there's a big overbearing continuous gable, and then there's these cross gables, which are more than 512.
I got
to give you the aesthetic look that you need and want.
Perfect, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Mr. Fenwick?
Is it less than 512, the other one?
Steve will look at it when he sits down.
So the roof that you really never see is less than 512. You want me to explain that to you? Sure, so it goes, well, so this roof is less than 512. But these roofs, which are really what's in your vision, are greater than 512. So, yeah, if that needs a variance, that needs a variance, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'd like to amend the application to include those two items that Mr. Fenwick
Yeah.
just mentioned.
So what is the overage on the height?
2 feet 11 inches.
2 feet 11 inches. Okay.
John?
Which is less than 10%.
Variance on the parts that aren't 5 and 12,
Correct.
Right.
which is a lot. But it's better to keep the aesthetics.
I think the steeper roof pitch looks, in that section, looks better for that area.
Yeah.
The section fronting on Washington Avenue, you see.
Yeah, and the end views, on Monmouth, you don't see the lower pitch at all. You see the steeper pitch.
No. So Steve, what I think,
that's the
what we're,
purpose in the ordinance, I believe.
Steve, I think what we're talking about is the roof slopes that you see visual to the eye from Washington Avenue, primarily, they are 512 or greater.
They're greater than
It's
512.
the rear section,
No, the main spine that runs down the middle. Here, I'll show it to you. Again, the main overriding roof, this roof, is less than 512, but the cross gables that you see from the street,
what people see from, what's visual,
you don't really see that pitch going back. You would never know what was between these gables pitch-wise. It doesn't have any aesthetic factor at all.
thank you, thanks.
How wide are the units?
Units are, it's a good question. I don't have a dimension on them. I can pull a scale out. But, do you have it, John? No? You're doing the math on it? I have a scale in my briefcase. What are they?
They're 18 feet wide.
18 feet, there you go. Like, this deck is 17 feet within the walls. They're 18 feet wide.
Good, Chris, we got it. We got it,
Sorry.
that's all right. John?
I
Steve, we're good.
Just a
Sorry, Mike.
stupid technical question, but if there's 6 units and there's 4 bedrooms, then that requires 2 parking spots per unit.
Correct. And each unit,
So why on the one thing does it say 15 spots are required?
15 are required.
Sorry,
Because
RSIS.
RSIS, it's 2.5
Oh, okay.
for this type of a multifamily unit,
All right, thanks.
as opposed to 12, right,
Okay, great.
And you have 10 extra?
yes.
There's 25 spots?
23?
23 spots.
All right. All right.
John will
Steve,
explain that. Yes,
Steve, is there
yes.
any materials you can use to increase the permeability
On the ground?
on the ground?
Well,
to
we've
help
been
the
talking
landscaping?
about using permeable pavers for some of the spaces to get closer to the requirement.
I mean, I don't know
And still
the
keep a
details.
parking space.
Yeah, no, but Roger has ideas where there's
And-
different pavers you can use to
And
increase
we've
the.
talked about that, and we're happy to go along
Rich,
with
Rich,
that.
what here's, building coverage is also under what's permitted. In front yard landscaping on both sides is way over.
Yeah, so John will explain all the site coverages and landscaping and
Thank you.
parking arrangements, which are so.
Thanks, we're good.
So
Thank you.
better than before, yeah.
John, you're a licensed professional planner and engineer,
Correct.
and you designed the site plan?
That is correct.
And one of the things we're requesting tonight is preliminary and final site plan approval,
Yes.
along with the variances that we noted?
Correct.
Why don't you go through site plan, and then we'll talk about the variances and some of the technical aspects of the site.
So I'm going to start with the survey that was submitted with the plan. There's a couple things I want to point out with regard to the existing conditions, and, I think it's important to understand where the site sits today versus where we're headed with this proposal. So the plan you have in front of you, or that I have on the easel right now, is the survey plan that was submitted with the application. There's no changes to it. As I'm sure everybody's familiar, old motel-style building, 2 stories. There are 10 units in that building. It is extremely out of character for the neighborhood at this point. This neighborhood from Amherst Avenue down Washington, all the way to the ocean at this point, the majority of those properties have been redeveloped. We've been very fortunate enough to work on a whole lot of them. And specifically in this block from Amherst down to Monmouth, many of them went from commercial to residential at different times. Mojo Restaurant, there was the pizza place that is currently still a vacant parcel that has been temporarily used. But I think time has proven that this area is a residential area. But as far as the existing conditions are concerned, the building is obviously non-compliant with regard to flood standards or any building codes. There is, in aggregate, between Monmouth Avenue and Washington Avenue, there is slightly over 95 feet of curb cut, because Monmouth Avenue has parking driveway for the majority of its frontage, and then you've got about a 15-foot wide drive apron on Washington Avenue, which is currently impeding a lot of on-street parking. And, you know, the site is just, it's non-conforming in many aspects. Obviously, it's underdeveloped as compared to the majority of properties in the community, but it is certainly time for something to take place on this property.
And John, we don't realize it's in excess of 16,000 square feet, it's like a third of an acre.
Yeah, so the site is 16,375 square feet. I'm sitting in the WSD zone, as Mr. McLaren described earlier. And it's the fact that it's in the WSD zone is what creates the challenge or the variance that we're asking for this evening. But what I did bring here is this is a 2024 Google aerial image, just to kind of go through the lay of the land, because it really goes to why the use variance request is very, very much appropriate with the application. So our site is sit right here in the middle, 9211 Monmouth Avenue, Winchester running up and down on the plan, Monmouth running left to right on the plan. You can see our building on the property. And what you can see in this block is you've had a number of what were commercial uses along Washington. They've turned to multifamily residential. That's a 6-unit building. That I believe is a 3-unit, that might be a 4-unit building. There's some duplexes behind us. There's a multifamily behind us. Across Monmouth Avenue, you've got multifamily buildings. Across Washington Avenue, you've got some single families. So if you look at our little community right here, there is no commercial. It's all residential. Various types of residential, some single family, detached, some townhouse attached, some apartment style or multifamily type buildings, but it is residential. There is nothing commercial about this area whatsoever. So the context of the area and how the area is developed, you know, we're not talking about a block that has a bunch of old construction or properties like our site where it's planned or eventually going to be redeveloped. We're talking about parcels that have all been redeveloped. The majority of the parcels in this block have already been redeveloped in the last 15 years.
You say that because the idea of commercial coming to those spots is not real likely.
It's not realistic at this point. These properties have redeveloped, and they've redeveloped as residential with no commercial aspect. So what are we asking, or what are we proposing? As Mr. Fenwick described already, we are proposing a 6-unit residential development, townhouse style, with frontage or access, I should say, front doors onto Washington Avenue. You can see from Mr. Fenwick's design, it is I'm going to call it a very pedestrian-friendly type of design. We're not proposing any driveways on Washington Avenue. You have nice walkways out to the street, a couple of steps at the right-of-way to create some separation between the public pedestrian and the private property. All fully landscaped to the point of front yard landscape coverage in excess of 80%, which I don't know that I've ever had a project in Margate that's been able to achieve 80% landscape coverage in the front yard.
And that's on both front yards?
That's on both sides, yes, that's correct. And then as you go to the rear of the building, that's our access. So there's a single 24-foot wide curb cut that comes off of Monmouth Avenue that accesses a 24-foot wide driveway, which is a standard 2-way driveway. That access drive allows the units to pull in, and they have the 2 triangles that I show on my plan. The forward triangle would actually be inside the garage, and then the rear triangle would actually be the parking space that would be outside the garage or a carport style of parking space.
It's under a roof, though, right?
That's correct. It's under the building. That's correct. It's covered, but it's outside. There's no door behind it.
The garage doors.
The garage door would be right here. So there's one space that's inside the garage, one space that's outside the garage.
The garage door is about halfway up the building.
Correct. That's correct. Yeah, if you look at Steve's plan, you can see like that gray space right there is outside the garage, but that is still underneath the building. So then we also have a bank of standard 9x18 parking spaces, a total of 11 of them, one of them being a handicap space or ADA space, compliant space with a multifamily building like this. An ADA compliant space is a requirement.
Of those 11, 7 are excess, plus the handicap?
So let me just touch on the requirement for a second. The requirement for a four-bedroom home is 2.5 spaces per unit. When you're dealing with single-family detached type of structures, the residential site improvement standards tell you that you get to round down. So 2.5 spaces per unit on a four-bedroom house becomes a two-space requirement, which is what everyone is used to hearing for a four-bedroom home. When you develop a multifamily building, you're not allowed to round down until the end. So you have to aggregate that 2.5 across all of the units. So it's 6 times 2.5, and then whatever your resultant is at the end of that, then you can round down to take the half a space off. So this technically requires 15 spaces. We are proposing 23 spaces. This would, I think, Mark, I think I'm 27 years now doing this. This will mark the first time I've ever been able to propose more parking on a site in Margate than what is required by ordinance. And I think it's an interesting thing. We talked about it at length with our client, and we could certainly blow out all the spaces to get to a 35% landscape coverage, and we would still comply with parking. We could do that and eliminate a variance, which typically is what you want to do. But we are in an area, as we all know, that is a very congested area, and it's only getting, I'm going to call it worse, but better, depending on how you're looking at it. It's a very popular area. And it's not just in the summertime anymore. So what we felt from a development perspective was that when you look at what the benefits are to be able to provide that extra parking, because let's be honest, we have 6 units here, these folks are going to have guests, and those guests are not going to park in their garage. So this is a scenario where we can really truly provide like easily accessible off-street parking for the guests of those residents, which are absolutely going to use them, because if you come to visit this person in the summertime, you're not finding a space on the street. That's going to be available to you. So we believe that the benefit of having those additional spaces far outweighs the negative impact of the reduction in landscape coverage.
And
But-
what is that reduction?
so it goes to 26.5%.
From 35%.
But we did, Mr. McLaren made a suggestion in his report with regard to modifying the surface that's within those parking spaces. We've discussed that with our client. He's more than happy to do that. We would select a grass paver block or some other material that would increase the perviousness of those spaces. But from a land use perspective, from a planning perspective, we think it makes a whole lot of sense to allow us to develop the parking as we show it. The only space that we can't get into, or I wouldn't want to get into, grass paver blocks or some other surface is in the ADA space and also the gourd space. We want to keep that as a flat, clean surface. So what we would propose is the other 10 spaces, we will modify the surface. It'll still be a variance, but we would modify the surface to improve upon the porous nature of those spaces.
Right, but is there a credit for a certain percentage of those, or we don't do that yet?
For the pavers?
Yeah, grass creek
Whatever
paver?
the percentage of the open area is, you get credit for that.
Okay, so that number will bump up?
The landscape coverage would go up, yeah. I mean, if we can get to 40 or 50%, it would go up, the spaces are 16, 20, it would go up by, we would pick up roughly 810 square feet of more landscape. I don't think that's quite enough, but it's getting better.
Sorry, question, John.
Yes, sir.
In regard to that, if this was a normal area, what you're saying would make a lot of sense, but this floods all the time. So you're gonna put landscaping in, grass and everything, it's not gonna survive. That street really.
Well,
They're raising the site.
so one thing I do,
How high, that was
Yeah.
the question, how high are you going to elevate the grade?
so the street, you're 100% correct, Mr. Collins. The street is in the 3s and 4s. What we are doing is obviously we have to maintain the grade across the public sidewalk. We are sloping up very quickly, which is why we have stairs at the back of or at the property line for each one of the units. And we are ramping up very quickly all along Monmouth Avenue. So we're getting the site and the garage slabs up to elevation 6. So it's going to be a dramatic improvement as compared to the surrounding land area. So could it still flood? Of course it could.
No,
But
then
elevation
you're not
6,
wasting
correct.
landscaping on an area that's not gonna survive.
Correct.
We're also, from a design perspective, I'm looking at a small retaining wall along that frontage to obviously keep the water to the best possible off of the landscaping and people as well.
Cars
But that-
too, the water's
right.
gonna be there, the cars are gonna
Right.
blow you out.
I want to follow up on what you're saying there, is that, and a big concern
concern of mine, what I think about, is that we're losing a lot of, I'm interested in what the comparison is of what we have there for land now as compared to what you want to have. So, like, the rainwater runoff, that's going to be, hitting the roof and into the street, because Washington Avenue floods, and I want to see all this water coming from this property going down to Tomato.
You want to compare what's there now compared to what we're doing? Well, from a site plan perspective, we can't make it worse. It's got to be the same or better under the law. But I think John can address the fact as to what coverage is now and the ability to direct water to the street, what we're doing, opposed to what's there now. Obviously, it will be an improvement. Will it be an improvement that is observable or that you can see or notice?
Are you going to pitch it away from the bay and to make, that would be, if possible, would be.
Well, it's pitching to the streets in both directions,
It's going to end up in the bay.
which would then eventually would go to the bay, correct?
Amherst
To
Avenue.
a tube, not to the bulkhead.
Right. So I'm just looking here, the existing landscape.
So John, by DEP definition, is this a major development?
So we're talking about a couple different things here. We're talking about landscape, and then we're talking about stormwater. So from a stormwater perspective, the two threshold elements that determine whether this is considered a major development and requiring stormwater measures to be installed are total impervious coverage, total increased impervious coverage, which you have to be increasing the site by more than 10,000 square feet in order to trigger the stormwater management regulations. From the existing condition, which we are not over that threshold. And then the other threshold for requiring stormwater management measures is if you are disturbing more than 1 acre of land, which our entire site is not 1 acre. So the site is not considered a major development insofar as the stormwater regulations of the state of New Jersey are concerned, which means that it is not required to provide stormwater management on site. Now, with regard to landscape, this is certainly a reduction in landscape. I'm just looking at our existing numbers here. It looks like, it doesn't look like so 62% is what it is now. And we are, again, we're proposing 26.5. If the board feels that the landscaping coverage is a more important thing than the parking, we can comply. We can make this 35% as per the ordinance requirement, eliminate parking, and then we would comply with the ordinance.
With the parking, I have a question. Because he's building this, does he have to have X amount of electric charging stations in here? Does that fit in?
No.
Well, what you do have to do is you have to have.
It's not a commercial site.
It's not a what?
It's not a commercial site.
So on commercial sites, that's where you need the.
Correct.
Because I know it's a new law.
Right.
But what you do have to do when you build the new construction is you have to provide, like in the garage, you have to provide a circuit that you would just,
Dedicated
bring your
circuit
car
for the charge?
and plug into that. So every unit will have that,
Okay.
right, Steve?
Well, it certainly could.
No, but I think it's, that's a
plug
requirement.
in their garage, and they could charge, like what I.
If it's required, it'll be there.
Yeah, but you educate me, that's a new law now that
It's been
cars
a
have to have?
few years, but any new construction, the electrical contractor has to provide for car charging. Yeah.
Yeah, I've dealt with this quite a bit in other communities. The term is make ready. You have to make the facility ready for a charging station, so that if somebody buys a unit and wants to has an electric car, the unit's ready to go. They just buy their electric charging unit, and the power is there for them.
Right. So this could theoretically, there'll be a provision for 6 charging stations in this project.
One per unit.
One per unit. Yeah.
You'd have for electric
Ten out.
range and stuff.
Right.
What, 40 amp, 50 amp?
Couple questions if I could.
Yes, sir.
To go, as you just stated, going from the 26.5 total landscaping to get to the 35, how many parking spots would that eliminate?
We would be able to maintain a total of 16 spaces, which would only be 1 in excess of the requirement.
All right. To Mr. Collins' question about the elevation steps, assuming they're all 8-inch steps? We're talking about 24 inches,
It's about 24 inches, that's correct.
2 foot. That's what we should assume.
Yes.
Bring it to 6. Right. All right. Thank you.
Yes.
So John, if you, in the parking, if you have the grass pavers on stone base, you would actually recharge, keep some of the recharge on site too, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we
Actually-
go to a big grass paver block with a stone base, I mean, you're going to get the benefit of the volume of the voids of the stone below the grass paver blocks,
Which would be better than just grass.
which will promote recharge and absolutely promotes recharge more than grass does. That's correct.
Do the board members understand what recharge means? You want to explain it?
It delays the release of the water as runoff.
Stays on site.
The water sucked into the ground.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah,
Kind of like doing a giant French drain.
that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And John, show the board, if you could, what area of the parking area would be the forced pavers?
Yeah, so the proposal would be, it would start just past the striped area next to the ADA space, and it would be all of that parking space, right, that I'm outlining with my finger. So it would be 10 spaces, they're 9 feet wide, 18 feet long, and that area would all be whatever we select with regard to an open paver or grass paver block.
Very good.
They're not intended to be, because the spaces have their individual private spaces, or the units have their individual private spaces. I don't know that we've gotten to that level, but our client's telling us that there's no intention to actually assign them. They would be used for use by guests.
If the condominium association wanted to do that, ultimately they could. If it became a problem, they could designate them amongst themselves.
So, how are you gonna keep people who are trying to find parking spaces to go to one of the restaurants out of your parking?
But, Ms. Roseberry, the best we could do is signage, sign it, no parking. Go ahead, John, I'm sorry, you want to touch upon the C variances then?
Yeah, well, I finished with the site plan. We kind of
Sure.
got into questions there. Let me
Sure.
just finish with the
Sure.
site plan. So, with regard to the balance of the site plan aspects, Mr. Fenwick already described, from a trash and storage perspective, once you get inside the garage, the garage space is actually an oversized space, or oversized area, so you keep your trash in that space, so you don't have to take it into your storage room, if you don't want to, but then there's also a dedicated separate storage room, for access both from the garage and the foyer area. Excuse me. From a landscape perspective, you can see that we've got a full landscape package here, which inclusive of street trees, grass curb strips. As Chris mentioned, there is actually a grass area behind the back of sidewalk before you get to the property line, so the perceived front yard is actually larger than what is measured on the plan, because when you walk by, you'll see, we've got a 15-foot setback on Washington, but you've got another 3 feet, so really you're 18 feet back from the back of sidewalk. A similar characteristic off of Monmouth Avenue, where we're proposing a 9-foot setback, but we've got another 3 feet, so the building's actually going to sit back 12 feet from the sidewalk. The back area where the parking is, we are proposing an evergreen hedgerow, which would help knock down both noise from vehicles, also light from vehicles, to create a nice buffer between us and the neighboring properties around the parking. Excuse me. The site will be lit. We are not proposing any freestanding light poles because we just don't think it's appropriate given the residential nature of this area. Mr. Fenwick is proposing to safely light, but not overlight the parking in the back by way of building-mounted lighting that will shine down onto that parking area. And I'm sure he'll have some pedestrian-friendly lighting along the front as well.
Talk about the on-street parking that will be picked up as a result of the closing curb cuts on both.
Sure,
sides.
I did some math today, and what I believe is going to happen is I believe we're going to pick up 3 spaces on Monmouth Avenue with the closure of the curb cut, 3 additional on-street parking spaces, and we will pick up 1 space on Washington Avenue. So that's a rare condition where you propose a new application and you pick up parking on the street. So this project will pick up 4 on-street parking spaces.
And there's only one street access for the entire site, and that's off of Monmouth Avenue.
That is correct. Yep. Yes, sir. Every space is 9 feet wide. Oh, I'm sorry. That space, I think, It's 10 feet, plus or minus, yeah.
Because I'm saying, I'm envisioning get some more pervious space to take that away, and then maybe put like a little couple benches there and a nice garden.
Our client is amenable to whatever the board thinks is appropriate. You know,
Yeah, I mean, we can work
we come-
backwards,
we-
we can work
yeah.
backwards from the 6 additional spaces.
Yeah, I mean, we come before this board, and other than single-family houses, every project, the discussion is parking. So we have an ability to provide more parking and really get the cars off the street. You know, you say, oh, we've got an extra space in our garage. Well, we know nobody's using that. This is real parking. If the board wants us to lose a little bit of parking to increase landscaping, we're happy to do it.
Yeah, 9 times out of 10, what would be before the board tonight would be commercial at grade, the parking variance, and 7 units above that. We have really tailored this project back to make it work at that location with the 5 or 6 additional spaces as well.
Yeah.
Because it really is drawn back from what the zoning in that corner calls for.
John, I agree. I'm a stickler for landscaping, but I think in this case with the congestion in that neighborhood, and if you put in the grass block or something, you could probably get up closer to 30%.
You know, it's with
But
the
I think I think it's an exception in this neighborhood to go with the extra parking.
I agree with Rich also. And, you know, what we talked about doing with the permeable pavers or the grass pavers and doing them over a gravel surface is better than just having the grass. Because
Effectively, your
going
percentage
in,
would,
you know,
would be higher as if there were more grass.
Right,
Because
correct,
of the
yeah.
absorption.
A lot better.
Yeah.
And we have spoken to the neighbors right across the street. They sent us a letter. That association, the round front building, they are fully supportive of the project. They're happy to see it, and they're happy that there's no commercial on the first floor.
I have a question. We were just talking about street trees and the problem with sidewalk upheaval on some of the areas where I don't know what you call the space between the sidewalks.
Governor Strip.
Thank you, Governor Strip. So on the Monmouth Avenue side, I see that the property line, it looks like, to me, it's at least 2 feet
Correct.
from the sidewalk. And I'm just wondering if the sidewalk can be shifted towards the building to give a wider governor strip along there so that you won't have problems with the sidewalk upheaval because the governor strip is too narrow.
I think.
So,
Go ahead.
we could certainly do that. I think the other main issue with having sidewalk upheaval from Governor Strip street trees is the tree selection.
The type of tree.
A lot of older developments selected trees that had roots that grew laterally, and that's what creates the issue. And Roger actually pointed out, I believe, a different species than maybe the plan shows, and we're more than happy to work with them. On Washington, I assume there's going to be a specific street tree selected as part of your pedestrian corridor project?
Yeah, so my suggestion is don't include the street trees on Washington Avenue.
Yeah, that's fine with us.
You'll tell us what the selection will be, then for Monmouth Avenue, we can remain consistent.
Right, and the other option is put them behind the sidewalk, which is what the insurance company wants us to do now, too.
Yeah, and we're happy to do any of those 3 things. I think that there's more benefit to leaving more lawn and landscape to have an appearance as part of the front yard than there is to make a wider governor strip.
Right.
But we will eliminate the street trees as part of the compliance package, assuming we receive an approval, so that can go with the pedestrian corridor project. And then as far as Monmouth is concerned, we could leave them where they are, or we can move them behind the sidewalk. Either way, I mean, we can accommodate either.
I do want to point out that the applicant has worked with the city in getting all the on-street parking off of Monmouth Avenue instead of having 6 curb cuts on Washington to respect the pedestrian corridor project we have coming up.
Yeah.
So I think that's a big safety issue and a plus for the applicant.
Yeah, I mean, before I get into my use variance testimony, which I'll be as brief as I can, I mean, this is a unique project. It's extremely rare that we come before this board with the ability to provide ample parking or excess parking for guests together with a project that is below the density. I mean, this property calculates to 7.44 units. We're proposing 6. That, I don't know that I've ever had an application in front of this board that didn't go after the density that's required, or permitted, I should say. So we have a developer, we have a developer that was very, very adamant about developing a project that's not overbuilt and that does work with this neighborhood.
Yeah, another aspect of that is the floor area ratio in this project is under 1.0. That's permitted to go up to 1.0. I think the floor area ratio is 0.8.
Yeah, and the building, just to understand, also the building coverage, which I believe is permitted to be at 50%, is only 42%. So it's 8% lower than what is permitted.
All of the density type calculations, whether it's floor area ratio, building coverage, or front yard landscaping, they all fall well within or lower than what's permitted.
Correct. And I just did some quick math while we were talking. If we select the grass paper block, that gives us about 50% openness. I don't know if we can get one that's that high, but 50% openness would actually would take us up 5% in landscape coverage.
31%.
So it would take us up to 31. I don't know that we can get to a 50%, but I was just doing that math to see what it would be. So we're going to be somewhere around the 30% range with that change.
And a 12-inch deep stone bed at 40% voids, you can store quite a bit of water.
Yeah, a whole lot of water, yep. So that's it, that's kind of I think, everything with regard to the site plan layout. We'll go to the use variance testimony, I guess, next, Chris?
Yeah, we'll incorporate the C variances into the use variance testimony.
Yep.
The testimony you're going to hear addresses.
Before you do that, just to
Yeah.
clarify what John said with Roger, he'd asked whether we wanted the trees in the governor strip or against the house.
Not against the house, but behind the
On
house.
the other side of the sidewalk. Is there a preference? I mean, it's a one-way street, and it's going away from Washington. For a corner, it might look better if it's on the governor strip.
I agree with Tom.
Really would. It would be more attractive
Got a big problem up here.
instead of up against the building.
Well, it's not up against the building.
And that's the way it's on the plan.
We're not up against the building. I think these guys talked about
No,
inside
on
the
the other
sidewalk.
side of the sidewalk.
Right.
I know that, but I'm saying it eventually. I like the way it is there. What's your opinion?
Tom, you want them on the curb in the governor strip?
Well, the way the trees are designed, yeah, because now they're gonna be salt tolerant. And Roger has a good program with these trees.
We're going to follow whatever the city streetscape proposes. We're going to follow that what
And
Roger has designed.
we're trying to get a aesthetic, and if you look at this plan, the way the aesthetic is, and it's gonna tie into our corner, it's gonna really make us look very green, Steve.
This is raised up here? Is it to match this?
Yes, from starting at the back of sidewalk, it's raised up, that's correct, yes.
So Roger, I don't know if you waited.
Only caution I would
You wrote
offer,
on that.
and there were comments made about it,
It's
pretty
narrow.
narrow.
I didn't like the
Sidewalk.
scribbles on it.
is how it connects to the adjacent properties. You're going to give yourself some complications there.
No, you can't.
Easier said as is, tabled and done, but I just offered it as
Think you plan is on
cautionary.
plan. Mr. Manos, just for the resolution, the testimony is going to encompass the C variances because without the D, we're not going anywhere. It's going to
Agreed.
encompass the C variances, and we're going to address the variances with respect to the entire project, not the individual element, which I think the law allows for.
If the governor strip is too narrow, it's not open to the public, sir, yet. If the governor strip's too narrow, we'll put the
If
trees.
it's too narrow, it'll be, we'll adjust it.
Put them on the other side.
Or we'll adjust it, one or the other, sure.
Okay.
Fire away.
Go ahead, John.
Okay, so, we are here for a use variance because of the fact that we do not have commercial at grade. It's extremely important to point out that our use as proposed is a permitted use in this zone. It's just not permitted to be at the ground level. So that we're not instituting a use that's not permitted at this location. It's just the fact that there is no commercial at the ground floor that creates the D variance. So we have, as you know, we have to put forward purposes of the municipal land use law that are advanced to establish the positive criteria for a use variance of this nature. We believe that there are a total of 4 that actually apply to the application. The first is we believe that this application promotes the general welfare. So why do we believe that? Well, first of all, we are redeveloping a site that is non-compliant with regard to flood. It is non-compliant with regard to parking. It is non-compliant with regard to building code. And we are developing a compliant structure that is very, very much in character with the neighborhood. We also believe that the general welfare is in advance because elimination of the commercial from this site, we believe, is actually a benefit to this specific property and to the neighboring properties around it because it helps reduce potential for congestion or potential for friction between that commercial versus residential that, you know, on a number of applications, you hear that time and time again within the community. This is I'm going to call it a locked-in residential area. There's new residential in all directions. This is not going to switch to a commercial space. Your commercial corridors, we've done a lot of projects. We fully understand the level of importance in protecting them. Atlantic Avenue, Ventnor Avenue, you know, parts of Amherst Avenue, we fully understand that. This is not one of those locations. This is a residential location, and having commercial in this location, we believe, would be a negative impact to this area. So we believe that by not having the commercial space, the general welfare is advanced. The second purpose of zoning we think is advanced is providing a desirable visual environment through creative design techniques. Mr. Fenwick always does a wonderful job. I believe he has developed some of the most beautiful buildings in the community. While he's asking for a minor deviation with regard to the roof lines, both the height and the slope, if you look at his architecture, you see that those variances are what's creating the uniqueness and of the building. So those variances that he's requesting with regard to his building really are a function of aesthetics. I believe that Mr. Fenwick's design has very much kept the pedestrian corridor and the pedestrian nature of this community in his mind because of the step back feel and look of the front setback of the building. You know, many of the buildings that we work with, they go after that 50% top floor, and that 50% top floor is right at the street. So while it's only a half a story, it's kind of up looming in your face. That is not what Mr. Fenwick's team has done here. He has a really nice step back design along the front of the building, which we think again creates less mass on the street frontage and a really pedestrian friendly
For the record, when you talk about a
appearance.
step-back design, you talk from that first floor deck back to where you catch up the second and third floor is well back from the front yard setback.
Correct. There's a number of levels of relief as you go up the building. Correct. The third purpose of zoning that we believe is advanced is the promotion of free flow of traffic. We believe that's advanced from a number of aspects. By not having the commercial, it reduces that potential for a number of trips, both to and from the site for the commercial use, both pedestrian and vehicular.
And many during the day, for the most part, likely, the commercial in and out during the day would be eliminated with just having solely residential.
Correct. The other thing this application does is promotes, or I should say increases on-street parking, which is something that frankly never happens in this community with a new development. The third aspect of promotion of free flow of traffic is that we are able to provide more parking than the ordinance requires for the use. So this project goes a long way to help, while we're building 6 new units, to help promote the betterment of the parking scenario in this area.
And for a project site as large as this, having the limited to one curb cut for the entire site on 2 frontages, does that also advance that free flow traffic concept? that you're speaking of?
Absolutely, because it's less access points in and out of the traffic streams on Washington or Monmouth Avenue. That's correct. And then the third purpose of zoning that we believe is advanced with the application is the establishment of appropriate population. Fourth. The fourth purpose is the establishment of appropriate population densities. As I mentioned already, this site calculates to 7.44 units. We are proposing 6 units. So the development as proposed is a reduction in the density. It's very much in keeping with the level of density in this area. The majority of these other properties, many of which our firm was fortunate enough to work on, we're right at the max of the 2,200 square feet of land area per unit. We are well under that by only proposing 6 units where nearly 7.5 units are proposed. So our density, we believe, is very much appropriate for the specific location. So based on those 4 purposes of zoning, we believe that the positive criteria is clearly established with the application.
About the negative criteria, whether the application can be variance can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good, without substantially impairing the intent and purpose of the zone plan and zoning ordinance?
So the first prong, is there a substantial detriment to the zone plan or the zoning ordinance? Well, from a zone plan perspective, residential is permitted at the location. The density we propose is below what is permitted at the location. The only reason that we don't comply with the zone plan with this application is because we don't have the commercial at grade. I've already discussed at length why we believe commercial at grade at this location is not appropriate. I believe that the development pattern in this area has proven that out, and I believe that this board, while maybe not the folks here that tonight, have on many occasions voted on applications in this area that are residential projects, which has kind of developed the pattern, or created the pattern of development, which is dictating what we're proposing here tonight.
So rather than there being a substantial detriment, you testified before, this, we believe, is actually a benefit not having the commercial.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. Is there a substantial detriment to the zoning ordinance? The three items that, with regard to the bulk standards or the zoning ordinance that we are deviating from, one is the roof items that Mr. Fenwick described. As I've already mentioned, they are architectural in nature. They don't provide any additional square footage to the building. They don't provide anything other than aesthetic appeal. So we believe that is certainly not a detriment to the zoning ordinance. We've discussed the coverage at length, or the landscape coverage at length. I think we've come up with a good solution, or a good balance between the parking that we're proposing as compared to the reduction in coverage, which is, again, we believe not a substantial negative to the zoning ordinance. And then with regard to the setbacks, as Mr. Balanson mentioned, the way that the lots lay out here, if you go down Monmouth Avenue, we're subject to the setback of one other building. And if you go down Washington Avenue, we're subject to the setback, I think, of only two other buildings because the parcels are large as you go toward Amherst. So the average setbacks that become the calculation as a result are excessive. They're 40 feet and 20, almost 22 feet.
I mean, two of the projects next to us, they have parking in front, so those setbacks are increased by the 18 feet you have for a car.
Because of their parking, correct. The setbacks that we propose here, we think are very much appropriate for a pedestrian corridor, and the ability to have the building where it sits still 15 feet off of Washington Avenue, still having really nice landscaping, and not having to have all the driveways on Washington, we think makes those setbacks very much appropriate. So all the C variances that we are asking for, we believe, certainly do not have a substantial negative impact to the zoning ordinance. The second prong of negative criteria is whether there is a substantial impact to the public good. This site was going to be redeveloped at some point. We, as Chris mentioned, I can't tell you how many clients over the years we've done concepts for on this. And the majority of them have been 7 units, or wait, how can I get 8? You think we can get a variance for that? I mean, that was the majority of our conversations over recent years. We found, or somebody found the right developer for this project, or for the community, I should say, by proposing a project that has 6 units. So keeping the density down, if I live across the street, I would be thrilled to death to have this coming as opposed to a couple thousand square feet of commercial at the ground floor, which, you know, the houses directly across the street are single-family detached homes. That's the last thing those folks, I'm sure, would want, is commercial across the street from them. We think that this truly is a benefit to the public good in this specific area, and not a detriment in any way. All of the needs of the building have been met by Mr. Fenwick's design, meaning trash has been well thought out, storage has been well thought out, parking has been well thought out, circulation has been well thought out, the architectural appeal has been well thought out. So for all those reasons, there is certainly not a substantial detriment to the public good. So with that, we think that both the positive and the negative criteria have been established.
John, there's special reasons with respect to the D variance we're asking for, and that's whether or not the site not can accommodate the variant use, the lack of commercial, but can continue to accommodate the variant use being a lack of commercial. Do you think the site is appropriately suited for having this development with no commercial at grade?
Yeah, I think they call that the Medici criteria. Is the site particularly well suited for the uses proposed? And the idea there being, if you're not proposing a permitted use, why is that site the right site for the use that you are proposing? I think that we've talked about that at length at this point. We believe that this site is particularly well suited for the use as proposed because commercial at this location, even if there was no residential above it, take the residential off the project. If it was just a commercial project, I would argue that it's not appropriate for this location.
Thank you, John. Great job. Thank you. That's what we have.
Anybody else from the board? Rich, you have anything? Any other comments, questions? No? Anybody?
The trash is individual trash containers, not a
Per unit, inside the unit.
Yes, the plan there was to have trash, the garage is oversized. In all likelihood, folks aren't going to want to store their trash in their nice storage unit, but there's more than adequate space for cans in the garage. We actually even discussed the idea of a trash enclosure, which I don't particularly think is a good idea in a residential area like this. It commercializes the site. So the proposal is that each unit owner would have it inside.
And would the garbage trucks pick it up in the drive, in the parking area? They would just be taking it out there, or do they have to take it out?
The folks would have to take it to the street. So in
Washington Avenue?
in this case, they would likely take it to Monmouth.
Okay.
Okay.
One other question.
Go ahead.
Chairman, if I could, in Roger's notes, it talks about considering a bike rack. Everything else, I think, has been addressed.
Yes, so we actually discussed the bike rack with the client. As you can see, our client's very willing to work with the board. My opinion about a bike rack on a private residential project like this is that it's not a great idea because the unit owners, they're not going to use it because they're not going to let their bikes stay out in the rain and what have you. And they've got a storage room, which is where they're going to store their bikes. So a bike rack is probably going to create a scenario where somebody else is leaving a bike there. All right.
Okay. All right, we're going to open it up to the public.
May I?
Sure.
I'm sorry, Steve. Listen,
One-
you've taken a priority.
Want to
Many-
just
My
name and address, and I'll swear you in.
Yeah, sure. Steve Bruno, 9200 Monmouth.
Okay, Mr. Bruno, do you swear or affirm that your testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
I most certainly do.
Thank you.
I want to commend the presentation. Are you the developer?
Yes, sir.
And your name is?
Mitchell Davis.
Mitchell, nice to meet you. I literally live across the street from the development site. And I will tell you that for you to take this approach and develop it in a way of which has been presented, aesthetically appealing, beautifies the area. All the components that were part of the presentation was incredible. I do have a little bit of a concern, if I may. The drainage and the parking. So when you look at Monmouth Avenue, the apron that presently exists, I think there was some discussion of opening up 3 more parking spots on Monmouth?
Correct.
Okay, so what is the apron dimension presently, and what are you going to scale that down to?
The current apron dimension is about 85, between 80 and 85 feet, depending on where you measure it to. And the proposed opening is 24 feet.
24. So it's almost 60 feet?
We're reducing by almost 60 feet, that's correct. And an on-street parking space,
John, grab the microphone.
oh, I'm
please.
sorry,
Thank
yeah.
you.
An on-street parking space typically is about 20 feet, so that's where I've arrived at the 3 spaces being added to the street.
Okay. I would just ask that there be some awareness to Monmouth parking. There's one spot presently that is offered now on Monmouth in front of the apartment or the 1011 unit. There's one parking spot presently. So when you scale that down and make 3 additional spots, all I ask is that the encroachment to Decatur is a very dangerous spot, and I say that to the board. It's very dangerous there. The intersection is very dangerous. So if you're going to open it up to 3 spots, I would ask the board to recognize that the 1 spot that is there now, it's minimized to 2, only because of the safety of the intersection of Monmouth and Decatur. It may not have anything to do with this. Yes. Okay. Well, right now, it's too close to Decatur, so if you're going to expand it to 3 additional spots, that's a concern of mine.
I don't think what happens. I don't think it has any impact.
So, sir, here,
Monmouth is gone from 60, 80.
you talking about that spot or that spot?
So here's Monmouth, right? You're going from
That's in Washington.
83
Yeah, correct.
to
24.
24.
Correct.
So this spot here is only one, there's only one parking spot, and here's Decatur,
Talking about on the building next door.
all right? This is Decatur.
Okay.
So right now, there's only one spot.
Okay.
And this spot is a very dangerous intersection for parking.
Okay, we're
So
not
if you're gonna-
changing any parking in
You're
this
gonna
area.
expand that to 3, no?
But down in front of our spot, our property toward Washington, down here is where we're picking them up.
You're picking them up down on that end,
Yeah,
okay,
not,
that's,
not on
okay.
your end. Or not on the-
And that may
That-
change
My
the city's
apologies.
project.
Okay, so that makes sense, because the other area going up towards Decatur is pretty dangerous.
Yeah, we're not touching that.
Okay. The drainage, you talk about drainage and the pervious, the pavers, I think would be a great complement to the property. So I ask now, after all the presentation, where is the water gonna drain presently? Where after the development are we gonna have drainage? On Washington or Monmouth?
So both, it'll be split between the two streets, which is what the site does now. We're not changing the flow of the site, we're just elevating it, but the flow of the site will still go out towards Washington and towards Monmouth. So we're not permitted by ordinance to allow any stormwater to flow on the neighboring properties.
Okay, all right,
So where stormwater goes now is where it's going to go upon completion.
okay. So you know there's significant
Very aware of
on
it, yes.
Washington.
Washington is one of the.
I know you've
one-
said it
yeah.
many times, you've been in front of the board many times. The height, you're 2.5 feet higher than which is permittable now,
Correct.
right?
But I think it's a little more than that, right? 2 feet 10 or something, Steve?
2 feet 11 inches I have.
Okay, so what is the height limit presently?
30 feet.
So we're going to 32.5 approximately?
Slightly more than
Almost
that,
33.
yes. Just under 33.
Can I also look at my notes real quick? Because there was so much, and believe me, I think the setbacks are incredibly reasonable. You know, the setback on Washington, the setback on Monmouth, I think is very reasonable. I don't think there's, and this will be a condo association? Yeah. There was some talk about a retaining wall.
So Mr. McLaren requested or suggested, where's the site? Suggested that with the couple of risers or stairs we have at each one of the entrance walkways, to have retaining walls between them to create like a nice elevation differential between the pedestrian, the public sidewalk, and the private property.
So you don't have a steep slope.
And that doesn't have anything to do with drainage?
No. In fact, it
Okay.
would,
All right, okay.
yeah, it's not,
Bear with my ignorance here, I'm just trying to understand this. So back to the commercial, I think it was originally presented by Mike, with the commercial, it was zoned commercial for a development eventually to Amherst, you know, the flow from Ventnor to Amherst, right? I think it was called WSD or something.
That's the waterfront.
I'm sorry if I'm not fairly representing. I'm trying to go through a lot of detail right now. So WSD, so now it's originally now commercial. We're gonna change it to residential.
Correct.
Which I think
Well, it's mixed use.
is an unbelievable enhancement to have that change made. I really believe that. There's far from a commercial area. Absolutely far from it. So I commend you for even the application on that. 23 spaces to 26. How many we having?
there's 23.
23.
Correct.
Okay. Greater from 26, okay. I support the application. I'm sorry if I'm a little bit nervous, but there's been a lot of detail which has been presented, and so try to summarize it as best I could. Thank you. I really commend you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Name and address, please.
Joel Naroff, 223 North Washington Avenue.
Mr. Naroff, please raise your right hand. Do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the
Say-
truth?
I can't, I got an artificial.
That's good enough. Swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right. I live just down the block on Washington. I have one positive to say and two questions or negatives to say about it. the issue of not having commercial, it was kind of a shock to find that this was still zoned mixed use, but, you know, it's clear for somebody who lives in where Mojo used to live, I can understand moving it from commercial or mixed use into strictly residential. So I think most of any of us that live on that area would support that aspect. What I don't support is the issues that are being raised about setbacks and even the use of the pavers. Our problem is not, for those of us that live on that street, okay, on Washington, our problem is water, is the flooding. It's not parking. I mean, yes, we have parking, but we lost that war a long time ago. And with the development that's going on across the street on Amherst, it's only going to get worse. And one or two spots here or there are not going to make a big difference to us. But, you know, we should be maximizing the amount of the landscaping that's there and not coming up with, you know, questionable, what I think is questionable solutions that are the pavers. We're still going to get additional water flowing onto Washington and onto Monmouth, and I think you should be worried a lot more about the flooding that we have there. So I object to it because, and I think if they get rid of the spots, the extra spots, which is a nice idea, but in terms of our problems on Washington's, okay, the problem is flooding, and it can't make it better, it can only make it worse. And so it's a negative, it's not a positive. The other is, I don't think the setbacks are far enough. And indeed, the idea of getting rid of the parking spots gives you a potential solution. You can reorient the location of the building, moving it back a little bit off of Monmouth, and you've got a big wall there, you know, that's, while it's great on the Washington side, it's not so great across the street from the Monmouth people who live there. I'm glad I'm on the Washington side, not the Monmouth side, to tell you the truth. But it's also the 15 feet, that's a lot, you know, narrower than any of the other units are. The units between that development and my development, I think those are the ones that are like, you know, 28 or 30 feet, whatever it is, and ours are shorter. Even the 20 feet, gives us a fair amount of distance. 15 feet, given the sizes and even given the setbacks, though, that the design has, I think is just simply not enough. And I don't know what is, I didn't bring my map of this, but if there, I thought I saw were there parking spots along the entryway off of Monmouth? No, okay. You know, I just think that 15 feet for a building a structure that big is just not enough. I can picture where it would be on my development, our house. If it was only 15 feet, it would just not be enough of that. So by getting rid of the parking spots, you'd have the room off of Monmouth to move it back and increase the, the Governor's Parkway, is that what it's called? And you'd have extra space in the front. And if you can find some extra space along Washington, that would be good. And I think getting rid of all of the extra parking spots would be an absolute necessity given the flooding issue that we have there. So that's my concern.
Thank you.
No, go right ahead.
There's one thing I wanted to comment on with the 15 feet. The 15 feet is to the property line. The actual space from the building to the sidewalk is, I don't have a scale on me. But
It's about 18.
How big?
About 18.
18 feet, right.
To the curb and to the curb?
To the sidewalk.
To the edge.
To the
But
sidewalk.
people perceive the curb as the property line. So I'm saying you got another 8 feet.
All right, Ms. Kenny, just your name and address for the record.
Joanne Kenny, I live at 302 North Pembroke Avenue,
Okay.
but I own 5 units on 122 and
You swear-
124
swear to
North
tell the truth?
Washington Avenue.
Swear to tell the truth, right?
I will,
Okay, go ahead.
definitely. Okay, I say kudos. This is a long time coming. I know how they feel. My husband and I bought up all these old units for years and years and years, redid them, and this is about the last project in this area. And I think it's wonderful what you're doing. I really like everything. I only have one suggestion, which is probably stupid, but I think you should assign one of those parking spaces in the back to each unit before somebody comes down and they fight each other for it. But I approve everything. I think it's wonderful. I think it's wonderful. Thank you.
Just a couple simple questions. Stephen Baglio, 9600 Atlantic Avenue, Margate, New Jersey.
And you swear to tell the truth?
Yes, I do. Could you explain a little bit about the pedestrian corridor? Because I'm not familiar with that. What is that plan?
The zone?
Well, you referenced the pedestrian corridor for that region. What is
Steve,
that?
years ago, when we did our master plan and we had all the committees, we had tried to make a corridor from the Lucy, basically, at the beach.
To the bay.
To the bay. And we designated zones and put planning in place, which was, this was part of it.
Gotcha.
And it was mentioned at the commission meeting by Mr. Dennis.
Yeah, I don't follow every meeting. That's why I'm asking it. Otherwise, I'm a little bit ignorant. But
And then
is there a
it got
grant that has been?
developed- It got developed, a lot of residential before anything could happen onto the corridor, so that the commercial corridor doesn't exist.
But that's not what he's asking. The city has a grant now. The street's going
What
to
is this
become
grant?
one-way. They're going to be narrowed with landscaping down both sides of it.
Bike
That's what the
lanes.
pedestrian corridor is.
So the previous streetscape is not going to be applicable to this region, right? To this corridor?
The what?
The streetscape that we commonly, like the bricks and the light stands and the
Well, that's going to be part of
trees.
this, too. It's going to extend from.
That's part of this
each-
corridor?
Yes.
That was my question. And I think that's a great thing. I think we should have that.
Just
Um,
for clarification, Steve, if I just could for a second. So it's clear on the record, it's not a residential zone. It's the Washington Avenue pedestrian corridor.
I understand. And really, most of that corridor is commercial, because once you go over 2 units per building,
Doesn't
it's
talk about
considered.
commercial or
I understand.
residential.
I understand.
Talking about pedestrian.
But in relationship to residential to commercial use on Washington Avenue, the majority of Washington Avenue is commercial, because when you go over 2 units,
It's not true.
not true?
That's absolutely not true.
Okay.
It's all residential, it's residential except for 101 Oak City Home.
So if an individual is in a unit that has 10 units in it, a building with 10 units,
Or 12.
12, can that individual owner go pull his own permit, or is it considered commercial and has to be done by a commercial?
Depends if there's an association or not, it depends if the units are owned individually.
Chris, can you grab a microphone?
Everybody, can we just keep the chatter down and let everybody
Yeah, but that's a
speak?
philosophical argument, not for tonight.
I'm just asking. The notices for this meeting tonight, was this delivered to the residents in this region for this project tonight?
200-foot list.
Or was it delivered last month when it was postponed to this?
It was delivered for last month, and an announcement was made in last month's meeting that it would be tonight.
That they will not be mailing out notices, correct?
Correct.
Okay, thanks. How much is the grant that has been provided?
That's for a governing body to deal with, it's not for the planning board to deal with.
It's just a
Not
question.
tonight.
Just a question. Give me 1 second. Roger, in your notes, you reference, in your opinion, the commercial use in this area would be limited, which would likely cause difficulty in finding tenants. How do you base that determination? How did you come to that conclusion? With the new development going on with Leeds, Gormley, Tomatoes, all that new development on the bay right there around the corner?
Probably the 20 people that came and met with me and said that walked away because they couldn't get a commercial tenant to operate there.
So this does not follow the garden apartments code in relationship to parking and things of that nature, or it does?
These are not garden apartments.
So that code does not apply to this property?
The same code applies to a different section of the code. It's residential site improvement standards.
What section of the code?
residential site improvement standards when it speaks to the type of dwelling, different categories of dwellings.
The type?
One is a garden apartment.
Okay. The overflow, you talked about increasing the grade to handle the flooding conditions there. How does the overflow discharge on the two areas that are adjacent to other residential or commercial properties? So you have two are street, Monmouth and Washington, but there's two that are adjacent to the other residencies on each side.
Flow gets directed to the streets, both
Correct.
streets, not to the other properties. Can't.
I don't think I have any other questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? Come on up.
Name and address, please, and I'll swear you in.
My name's Dennis Block, and I live at 204 North Decatur Avenue.
204 North,
North Decatur.
Blog?
Block.
Block, I'm sorry. Mr. Block, do you swear affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth?
Yes.
Thank you.
I live at 204 North Decatur. If you're on our back deck, I'm looking right into this development that's going to be built. I'm concerned about this back where you're going to say you have 26 cars. That's a lot of cars in I don't think a very big space. How are you going to maneuver people to drive in and out? Each house has a garage, which will hold one car, and one car will be behind that, for each house, right? Okay. So what about, where are you going to put 20 cars?
I can explain that. So if you look at the site,
Microphone, John.
if you look at the site plan here, sir, you'll see.
I tried to, but you were blocking when you were talking.
Okay, well, here we are. I'm going to show it to you right now. So if you look at the site plan, you come in, there's a driveway off of Monmouth Avenue that comes into the site.
Okay, stop me for a second.
Okay.
There's a development here, at 200 North Decatur.
Correct.
Okay. They have a fence there.
Their fence is over here.
This is their fence, okay.
Correct.
Go ahead.
Okay, so a car would pull in. If they were going to park in the garage, they would turn in and go into the garage, or they could park in front of the garage door, which would still be under the unit.
Right.
And then the other parking spaces, you would come in and turn and pull into the space. This driveway at 24 feet is a properly sized driveway to have parking on either side of it, which is what this layout is. This is a very standard set of dimensions for parking spaces and drive aisles in any parking lot in the state.
Okay, so these are all spaces, correct?
That's correct.
And this space, if I live here, I can put a car in my driveway, and then there's one behind there. What about this space here? Does this person back up and hit this car?
No, sir. There's 24 feet between what would be the back of this car and the back of this car. So if you ever drive into a shopping center and go into a parking lot, you drive down a drive aisle, and there's parking on the left and parking on the right. This is the same exact dimensions as any parking lot you've ever gone into. And then there's another 10-foot buffer between the edge of those spaces and the Decatur, that property you were just speaking about. There's a 10-foot landscape buffer between the edge of the space and the fence.
Okay.
So the parking is not even up against the fence. There's still another 10 feet of landscaping and evergreen trees
Before you hit this wall.
before you even get to that wall. That's correct.
The other thing is, you mentioned that this property right now, I believe was private, and they had their own contract to take the trash away into the dumpster area that was in back, which is right behind where we live. That's gone. They'll be.
Correct.
Okay, so you're going to tell me that all these people are going to bring their garbage and recycle out onto Monmouth Avenue. You have a designated space for that?
To you.
Or where the trash trucks could come?
Where everybody, I'm sorry.
Everyone does.
It's a city or county truck, and the trash will go on Tuesday morning or Monday morning, whenever it may be, right where everybody else puts it along the curb line, to be picked up that morning. Just like everybody else is entitled to do.
Okay, if you're on where I live, Decatur.
Sure.
Okay, we all have two spaces, and the 200 block, they all have spaces. Okay, you're putting your trash right on Monmouth.
Okay.
Okay? It's not that there's a driveway here, your car's here, and then there's where your trash.
No, you're still misunderstanding the way the site plan is. The curb line where the trash will go is 20 feet away from the first parking space up on site.
Sarah, I don't understand what you're saying.
Sure, I mean, Respectfully, Monmouth Avenue is here,
Yes,
the curb is here,
yes.
the first parking space is back here. So maybe I don't understand what you're saying.
So that's where the
So the
people
trash
line up
isn't-
their trash, and
Likely in this area or in this area, yes.
likely it's not a good word.
Okay, how about it will go either in this area or in this area?
I'm just asking.
It won't go in front of your house.
Well, I lived with it for 9 years with that dumpster behind our house, and it was all.
So you should be happy that's not going to be there.
I agree with you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay.
Nothing further, Mr. Chairman.
Nothing further. Nobody else from the board?
Really quick.
Go ahead.
I think for this gentleman, as the way I understand it, you're picking up 40, almost 40 feet on Monmouth. 40 feet of curb, because 60 is going to go, so you're going from 80 to 20, roughly, right? So you're picking up 60 feet of curb, right? So think of that curb space can be used for depositing the trash can at the curb for the trash pickup. And believe me, I live right across the street. I'm with you. I believe me, I get it, and I respect that. But picking up almost 60 feet is amazing to me. It's a compliment, believe me, to that apron. But I know there's a lot going on. I wanted to help interpret a little bit. But thank you. Sorry for that. Yeah.
All right. No one else from the public, nobody else from the board?
Just have a question for John, or a quasi-question statement. The predominant flooding in his area is tidal flooding, because I'm looking at the elevations, they're pretty darn low.
Yeah,
This will not impact tidal flooding. It won't make tidal flooding any worse.
That's correct. There's a lot of conversations tonight about flooding. This is an extremely low-lying area. Washington Avenue is, frankly, from one end to the other than maybe the beach block. And the increase in impervious coverage here will nominally affect even stormwater runoff, let alone the actual, and the tidal flooding will not be affected whatsoever by the development of this.
Right.
The majority of the floods that we deal with here are as a result of the tides. And if you have a tide together with a rainstorm, that's when you see, the worst case scenarios.
Right, and as a floodplain manager and engineer, and you're an engineer, elevating the property just a little bit to get it out of harm's way and out of the flood zone, or higher out of the flood zone, it's an improvement, correct?
Yeah, it's an improvement. It doesn't solve everything, no, but what it does is it takes this property and the garages and the property itself high enough to an elevation that it avoids a number of the nuisance flood conditions that you deal with throughout the year.
Correct, all right.
Thank you.
I have one question for Steve. The area between the two peaks, and on the rear side of the building, the roof is flat, which for the 4 middle units, the back side of them. And I was just wondering where the HVAC units are going. Are they going on that flat roof area?
Yeah, we got the answer. Okay.
Thanks, Steve, we're good.
All right, yeah, let's get, I think first, let's get on the same page with the conditions. Roger, am I accurate in saying that the applicant will agree to work with the city and its officials with respect to the Washington Avenue pedestrian corridor and the streetscape?
Yes, so in that regard, there may be some incomplete items on their part that aren't incomplete because we're trying to schedule the city's work with their work, yes.
Okay.
Should we have an understanding as to if the project would like to be finished and look finished, should it be grass, should it be concrete or a
We will
temporary
work,
sidewalk?
we will work with you and the applicant to make sure that you get your COs and nothing that's not done.
Won't hold you up.
Won't hold you up.
Very good.
Quick
Okay.
question though, are we doing this as a D by itself, so, because nothing counts if it doesn't go as a D, right?
We could, it's usually up to the applicant. If you want two separate votes, or you think everything's so interrelated, we could just do
I
one.
think it might as well vote on it together. If the D variance isn't granted, there's no point in being here for anything else. So I'm okay with that. Yeah.
All right, then the other conditions, you'll provide an engineer's cost estimate and the required bonding and guarantees as required by law. In the 10 additional parking spaces, which excludes the ADA space, you'll do some, I guess we'll call it grass paver block with stone base.
There's 15 spaces that are required, and we have 23, so there's 8 additional spaces,
There's 8 additional.
and that includes an accessible space.
Okay, so the 7 additional spaces.
That's right, and an accessible space.
Okay, so there's 7 additional spaces, excluding the ADA space, you'll provide those. I assume that's just in the parking spaces, not the whole parking surface, correct? Okay. And then, in terms of street trees, I think we said along Washington Avenue, no street trees, and we'll deal with those as part of the pedestrian corridor. On Monmouth,
As shown on the plan. As shown on the plan, which right now, they're in the governor strip right
But
now.
if
Gonna leave them there.
on Monmouth, but if it's too narrow, you can move them back onto
Correct.
behind the sidewalk. That's Monmouth. I'll note a bike rack won't be required, and then the other conditions will say, anything in Mr. McLaren's report unless otherwise addressed, subject to any outside approvals that may be required, subject to any representations made by the applicant during the course of the hearing.
I've reviewed the checklist, there's no waivers requested.
No checklist waivers, and in terms of design waivers, this isn't a commercial project, so we'll say to the extent not applicable, they're waived. Is that?
Yes.
With respect to a commercial site.
You'll
plan.
comply
Yeah,
with what you
I
can
agree.
to the extent not applicable to this type of development. The design waivers will be waived. In terms of variance relief, it's the use variance because there's residential on the ground floor, and that's not permitted in this zone. Residential is only permitted above commercial. And then the C variance, it's the front yard setback along Washington Avenue. They're at 15 feet. What the actual prevailing minimum, John said it, I think he said over 40 feet on that frontage, and unless I have them backwards. And then on Monmouth, they're at 9 feet, and the prevailing minimums in the
I think it was
20s.
15.
It's the other way.
Okay, well, all right. We'll get those exact figures, but what they're proposing is 15 along Washington, 9 along Monmouth. The landscape coverage, the requirement's 35%. Right now, they're at about 26.5%, but we think that'll get they'll get up to approximately 30%, was the testimony. So I'll craft that in a way that makes that clear. The height of the building, they're 30 feet's permitted. They're at 32 feet 11 inches, so that's a C variance for height. Then the roof pitch, 512 is the minimum, and then they're less than 512. Is it my understanding that's kind of
For a portion of the roof.
between the peaks? Is that
Right.
They're like the crickets, I think, right?
Between the gables?
Yeah, that's kind of what for a portion of the roof.
It's imperceptible.
And included with that is preliminary and final major site plan approval.
Yeah, there's 8 members, it's a 5-vote variance. Are there 7 members that vote? And 1 alternate still?
There's 1 alternate, and there'll be 7 voting members. You'll need 5 yeses. Correct.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Sorry, hold on. Tom Collins?
Gentlemen, you did a really nice job tonight, answered a lot of questions. I think the hardship in this case was a self-inflicted hardship from the board from years ago, which I was part of. But we did not know or have a vision at that time as what was going to happen. So as far as the D variance, I think it's very justifiable because part of it is because we created that which you had to overcome. It also enhances and clears up part of our zoning. And it's the way you've designed this project, it's quite obvious you're giving a lot back to the city. The major benefits are getting rid of a old apartment that we used to hang out when we were kids, right, Chris? And you're going to make a really, really major improvement to the area. I think the parking is crucial to what you're doing. It really is. Just to the own sanity of your tenants. Roger took away my steam on the flooding because the flooding is coming from the bank. It's tidal flooding. And until we can get that under control, the best thing you can do is to elevate your property and to put the little buffer wall in front. I think you're meeting every aspect of a positive nature. I see no negative criteria on this, and I think that it's going to make a welcome addition to the neighborhood in Margate. So I vote in favor.
Richard Patterson.
I agree with everything Tom said, and again, how this could negatively affect tidal flooding beats the heck out of me. It's not going to make one difference, positive or negative. It's not going to affect the tidal flooding. And I also think the parking is crucial here. I also think the setbacks are very sufficient. You have 18 feet in the front. The other places have parking in front of their houses, which push them back, which makes it harder for these people. So I think it's a beautiful project. I think the fact that you went with only 6 units is very commendable. I know we met with a developer preliminarily, and he was very cooperative for listening to the city's point of view, and I approve.
Michael Richmond.
I think eliminating the commercial is an improvement, a benefit to the neighborhood. I think that the setbacks, because of the, is skewed. I think that's almost like a hardship to try to have them conform to those setbacks. I also, like I said before, the property line actually sets in from the sidewalk, so it says 15 feet, but in reality, John said it's about 18 feet from the sidewalk. I think in that area, with all the other multifamily buildings, I don't really think that the height variance is a problem. The roof pitch is, like I said, imperceptible. You can't really see it between the two roofs that exceed the pitch that is required, 512. I think it's a great project, and I'm going to approve it.
Margaret Gubernati.
So I think the site is certainly well-suited for the use proposed. Quite frankly, I think that this project, and thank you, you did a great presentation, is a gift to the city of Margate. I mean, it's a gift. This is a great project. It lends itself to the pedestrian corridor. We gain parking. I think the parking's more important than the landscaping at this point. It's flood compliant. It's below density. The positives certainly outweigh the negatives. It promotes the betterment of our community, and it's a slam dunk. I am in favor.
Stephen Giuseppe.
As I mentioned before, flooding is my biggest issue here, and although it is tidal flooding, stormwater flooding is a big issue. But I think you understand the bioengineering that we're trying to do with creating more of a big sponge underneath by raising up the level about, 4 feet? So I'm in favor of that. I think that 2 feet? Okay. But even still, it's good. The roof pitch, I think that's negligible. And the fact that you have this building tiered back. I didn't mention that, but you tiered this back because I was afraid that we were going to be looking at a 40-foot wall as we walk down Washington Avenue. And that could possibly happen if it wasn't for this, if it was for something else. I think those benefits approve.
Andrew Campbell.
I really appreciate the commitment that all of you guys made to improving this property, and it's going to improve the surrounding areas as well. the concession that you made to either get the landscape to 35% by eliminating some spots of the off-street parking, just showed me that you guys are willing to work with us on that. And I agree with Tom and some of the other board members that it's not gonna make that much of a difference, the 5%, when we've lived on this island forever and all the flooding comes from the bay, tidal flooding. And then picking out 4 spots on the street is huge. So, I'm in favor.
Rich Tolson?
The applicant has certainly proven tonight that it's consistent with the neighborhood. Although I could probably still throw a baseball far enough to hit a commercial building from there. The rest of Washington Avenue is as you described it. Parking is an asset. The additional parking that you provided off-street is an asset to the driveway. Creating 4 additional spots on the street is an asset. The consideration to the Washington Avenue corridor project is certainly an asset and will in turn be an asset to your project once completed. Permeable surface tries to address as best as possible any potential flooding and handling the runoff. So I'm in favor of the project.
Approval is granted, 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Very much.
Any other business?
Yeah, we do. I have, this is Pinky's last meet,
Thank you.
for the board.
I got one thing too. Very,
So,
very
this is
easy.
Pinky's last meeting.
Moment of silence.
I mean, obviously, I think Pinky was a great board member because I chose her as my vice chair. I think she had a lot of common sense. I always appreciated everything she said. I think she was very open-minded. As a friend and, human being, she's a great person, so.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Can I just say a few words? It's been an honor to be on the board for,
We're still doing
Wait a
business
second.
here. Would you keep it down, please?
it's been an honor for, what, 12
Steve,
years?
keep it down. Go ahead.
It's been an honor.
Thank you.
My honor to be on the board for the past, I think it's 12 years or so. 12
Yeah, I think it was 2012 or
12 years. I've been privileged to work alongside the board members that are present and that are no longer present. I think I made a positive impact on a city that I've raised my family, that I love, that I will continue to love, and I thank you all. It's just time to kind of be free and move on Thursday nights.
Yeah.
But thank you all.
So, Mike, just real quick before Leo goes, I guess everybody knows between zoning and planning, I've had 26, probably 30 years on the board.
You want to talk? Oh,
This
you
will
have
be
the
my
mic.
last meeting, too.
No way.
I'm going to retire after,
Well,
so. It's time for, I know,
We
Rich.
didn't plan any speeches.
It's
wing it.
it's time for younger blood to come in. New ideas, go in the right direction.
You'll still be part of the planning process.
I
If
go to
you're
the
not in Florida.
I go to the hardware store a lot, and Tom and I really had some good
Good
discussions.
conversation.
Yeah.
Yes, we
Just us two, though. We didn't
No quorum, right?
Yeah.
It's, over the years, Bill Ross appointed me. I had an extensive background with title searches. I did 15 years in a national title company. The people that I've met here, Roger, all you guys, and many, many members before, back to Ted Finkenauer, who was my first chairman. It's been a long ride, and it's been fun. We've gone through 2, probably 3 I've done, master plans. And each time we get better. And each time we're we're going from a 5-year forecast to a 20-year forecast. Now we're trying to look at a 50-year forecast. Doesn't always work, but I think we're going in the right direction. And you got a good board, Palmer, gonna miss you the most.
Yeah, all the best.
But I can stop in the city hall.
Absolutely. You know where to find me.
Tom, just starting to like you as a member.
Chris, I was on this board, on the zoning board, when Chris came in, all nervous and jerky. It was his first case.
So what's changed?
On his very first case.
Did he speak slower than?
And I helped you that night.
25 years ago, it's okay.
Long time. So, anyway. Leo, it's all
Yeah.
yours.
Yeah.
Collins, I was just
Thank you.
wondering, were you referring to me when you were talking about younger people coming? Because I took it as a compliment.
The only thing I have real quick, our January meeting's not scheduled, so what were you looking at, Palma?
The 30th. would be
30th?
I thought it was. Didn't we schedule it last year?
Yeah, we
No, we didn't.
put out,
I don't think so.
we technically
Maybe
do
we
it the
did.
right way.
I think
which
we
is
have
the hard-
some calendars the 30th.
Maybe we did.
Maybe we can schedule, we'll check. If
It's
not,
possible.
if not, we're gonna schedule for the 30th. and
30th
then
would be better for me.
on the 30th, we'll have our 2025 calendar that we'll review and approve then. So, either way, it's gonna be the 30th, whether it's scheduled or not. That's it.
All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Second it?
I'll second it.
All in favor? Aye. All right.